What's up, creepos? Lauren here. I'm bringing you guys another Freeloader series episode from podcast gone by. Back in March 2018, we recorded the West Memphis Three episode, which is probably my all-time favorite case. It just boggles your mind trying to figure out who did this horrific crime to these three young children. A lot of times you feel like you have it pegged, like it's definitely this bastard, and then new stuff comes to light, and you read and you study more stuff, and you're like, no, it couldn't have been him. It could have, is it a stranger? Is it one of the parents? It just drives you nuts. And the further we get away from this case, it seems like the less clarity there is. And we may never know who did this, sadly, but it's still. I got crazy studying this one. We read a great book, and I had the whiteboard out connecting all these dots, and yeah, we got crazy, man. We hope you guys enjoy this episode. We also hope you guys are enjoying fall, man. I hope you guys are consuming tons and tons of pumpkin spice, watching scary movies, getting into the season. I want to say, if you are a Patreon member right now, we know that there was supposed to be a Patreon exclusive episode posted this past week. We had another mix-up with audio. Unfortunately, I lost the last 30 minutes of my side of the audio. When I sent it to Michael, I thought we were good. We were going to get it posted this past Wednesday. And he texted me all bummed out saying, dude, the last 30 minutes of your recording is gone. And we're not going to let that stop us. We just actually recorded the last 30 minutes over again. I think it went even better. And so that's going to be up very soon if you are a Patreon member. Just be patient. We've got it. Dennis Nielsen is actually who it's going to be. One of the most prolific British serial killers. Creepy-ass guy, perfect for Halloween season. That is going to be posted very soon. We hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I'll see you at the end for some advertisement and shout-outs for all the people who have written reviews and stuff on iTunes. So enjoy West Memphis 3.
Most of the time, he came up with the stupid ideas. I guess I influenced him about as much as he influenced me, I guess. Most of the time, we didn't really set out to do anything in particular. We just started hanging around, and whatever happened just usually happen. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. We were just sitting on the couch watching TV the night we were arrested.
Convicted in what many labeled a literal witch hunt, no physical evidence against them, imprisoned for nearly 2 decades.
They were the unusual kids in town, dressed in black. They listened to heavy metal music. They were goths before goths were fashionable. And so they were easy targets.
The town was already convinced the 3 devil-worshipping kids were guilty.
As I look at all these dark clouds roaming in on me today, it can very easily remind me of May 5th, 1993. Jesse, Jason, Damien, those names ring in my ears daily. And I still hate you. Forever and a day shall I still hate you.
We haven't had fairness in this case from day one. We haven't had fairness in this case from the day they got a search warrant. We haven't had fairness from day one concerning the numerous motions we filed. There hasn't been a fair day in this case.
They're cold-blooded murderers.
In your opinion, it doesn't add up that way.
In my opinion, and 24 jurors out of the state of Arkansas's opinion.
I believe every person has a good side and a bad side, yes.
Well, were those your words when he's got written down here, he stated that there was no control of the demonic portion of people?
He asked me, did I think there were some people that could not control that side? I said, yes, I guess there is. If he didn't get the answer he liked, he would go back and try to get me to say something else.
And if he says something different, he'd be lying about it, right? You're the one telling the truth.
I wouldn't put it past him.
You think he could have done it?
About what they said?
Yeah, do you think Damien could have killed those little boys?
They made it seem like he did.
Think what you might, but you can kiss my ass.
All right, so we're doing the West Memphis 3 case. We're going to start at the beginning. May 5th, 1993. I was 6 years old. I could have been friends with these kids if they would allow me because they were just a couple of years older.
Nah, you weren't cool enough.
I wasn't cool. Oh, come on.
You were totally a second grader. Get out of here.
No, they were second graders. I would have been.
I thought they were third graders.
I would have been. No, they're second.
They're 8 years old. They're third grade.
Second.
Wow, they must have been held back.
Already arguing about facts in this
My
case.
son's 8 years old and he's in third grade.
Okay, maybe your kid's advanced. I don't know.
Nah, he's not.
This is Arkansas we're talking
I
about.
love him to death, but he's not advanced.
That being
he's
said,
smart.
Nevada, specifically Las Vegas' school systems are pretty crap. So that's
Their
how
school's
someone
pretty good.
like me comes about.
They're going to a brand new school this year, though. So
Well, let's learn more about your kids, Michael.
all right,
And forget about the West Memphis Three here.
They
All right, so 1993, May 5th, the small town of West Memphis, Arkansas. It's actually West Memphis, Arkansas, even though Memphis is obviously Tennessee, but we're kind of on the border here, these two states. Small town, Bible Belt. You could say a hick town.
definitely
You could say a lot of things.
99% white.
Probably a slightly lower education than the national average.
Yeah, they don't.
Very, very religious.
Extremely religious.
Set in their beliefs. Lower income area for sure.
Yeah, this is a town to where you go through the motions even if you're not a believer.
Right. You best believe.
Just to keep the heat off.
You best believe you're going to end up in prison.
Because it benefits everything in your life. It benefits your business, your connections, your jobs.
Had these three followed suit, this never would have happened.
That's exactly right. You're absolutely right. If they would have conformed, whether at least on the outside,
right.
If they would at least played church, they would have been fine. I honest to God believe that.
Right. That being said, 2 out of the 3, I don't think were too far off from that, really. Like Jesse, I guess. I mean, but he had issues.
Yeah, but you roll with the dogs, you get the fleas, Lauren.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could say that about Jason, because Jason seemed just totally normal to me, honestly, other than the black T-shirts. But what are we getting off track already?
Listen, he listened to you too, okay? If that's not a devil band, I don't know what is.
We were starting from the beginning, and we jumped to the end again. So May 5th, 1993, small town West Memphis, Arkansas that we talked about. 3 boys are reported missing by their families. It starts with John Mark Byers. He has a son named Christopher Byers, who is 8 years old, and he has not come home.
Right.
And it's getting late. It's coming up on getting dark.
Right.
He had seen him earlier in the day. He had actually seen him on his skateboard, on his stomach, skating down the road, and actually...
Good idea.
As the parents do, they fear for their children's safety and brought him back home, and he even told police that he had given him a few, what was the term he used, swats or?
Probably licks.
Licks, yeah. He said he had given him a few licks, I believe with his belt or some
with
sort
the belt.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of weird that your son's reported missing and then you're immediately giving up information that you know. But, I mean, I guess that's forthcoming. You don't really want your...
Also, I think it's worth mentioning it's his stepson.
It is his stepson, yes. But he had raised the kid basically from birth.
Right.
When he met his wife, Melissa Byers, she had a different name at the time, obviously she from a former marriage, and he had raised this kid. Melissa was pregnant when they had met, and so he'd raised Christopher from basically birth, and looked at him as his own son.
Yep.
And so he's gone around looking already for Christopher and been unable to find him, and he's now reporting it to the police, but he's also continuing to look.
Yeah, he is.
He's kind of almost gathering a posse. This is a small town because at the same time, 2 other kids around the same time within that night
Two of his
are
friends
reported missing, and they are all friends. There are 3 friends. Steve Branch is also an 8-year-old. He's the son of Pamela, and his stepfather is Terry Hobbs.
Right.
So you got Pamela and Terry Hobbs, the parents of Stevie Branch. And Michael Moore is also reported missing by his mother, Dana Moore. His father, Todd, is out. He's a truck driver. He's gone for the night. He comes back in the morning to help with the search because the search continues through the night. So these 3 boys are reported missing. They'd last been seen. I believe the last person to see them was Dana Moore's daughter, Dawn, which is Michael Moore's sister.
Okay, she was the last one to see him?
I believe so because Dana had sent out her daughter, Dawn, to go look for her son,
right?
Because it was getting close to dark.
So she must have found him.
She said that she had seen him around the area of the woods. I believe there's a patch of woods called
Robin Hood
Hills,
right?
And this area is not too far from where they all live. It's kind of sketchy because it's close to a truck stop called the Blue Beacon truck stop, I believe.
Nice.
That's something as a parent, you know, you'd have a patch of woods, it's already kind of sketchy enough,
Yeah,
and then you
and
get a
then
truck
next to a
stop with
truck stop-
strangers rolling through all the time.
Yeah, people just passing through. People have no connection to your town.
Yeah, parents would warn all the time about, you know, sketchy characters that had rolled through.
Yeah.
And so Dawn had also reported that she had seen strangers coming out of the wooded area, 3 teenagers, 2 black teens and a white teen coming out of the area that she didn't recognize. She said that she thought that they were about 16 or somewhere in that range, and that they had offered her a shot. Strange characters.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so this is all part of the police report. But Dawn had seen them. Yeah, and Dawn had seen.
And this is how she identified these 3 teenagers, by the way.
Right.
As 2 black teens, 1 white.
Right. I believe she had a description of the clothing of the white teen, but not of the black teens. I don't know. Kind of strange.
Yeah.
So the search is picking up steam. Like a lot of family members of the kids are now gathered together, and friends and just strangers like hear that there's kids missing. They're riding around on quads and whatnot looking. And John Mark Byers is kind of obsessed with the idea of the woods. He knew that the last time the kids had been seen, they'd been heading towards that area.
Yeah. He's a strange character.
And he is.
Well, we're going to hear a lot about him in this story.
Yeah. If you guys know about West Memphis Three, you know about John Mark Byers.
Oh, God.
A lot of speculation about whether he had something to do with this or not.
Right.
He's very theatrical.
Yeah, you could say that.
Theatrical, dramatic. Granted, this is a dramatic situation.
Yeah.
But you get the feeling he'd be dramatic if anybody put a camera on him, no matter what the situation was.
Right.
He's the guy at church that liked to get up in front of everybody and sing, and you know, you could have definitely seen this guy as like a popular pastor. He could have been a.
Oh yeah, he was very charismatic.
He could have been a cult leader.
Town.
He could have been a cult leader.
I was just about to say he's the type of guy that when like the world ends and it's like taken over by zombies, he would be like Negan.
He'd be taking.
He would be like have a group of followers, just a bunch of redneck trash followers, just begging, you know, right at his heels, just whatever he wants.
Right. Now we have to talk about some other police reports that had been received on this day as well. A police officer, she was a female officer named Officer Meek, responded at 8:08 to a call. That was the call from from John Mark Byers about his son being missing. So she responds to that, takes some notes, and then shortly after that, she gets a call to respond to a situation at a Bojangles restaurant.
Best restaurant.
Yeah. Have you ever had that?
Hell yeah.
I've never
originated
had it.
in North Carolina.
Is it fried chicken or what is it?
Yes, it is. It's like
Good?
Cajun fried chicken. Yeah.
Ooh.
Biscuits.
So supposedly from 8:29 to 8:42, she searched for the children, cruised the area, talked to several people, according to her court testimony. And then at 8:42, she was dispatched to this Bojangles restaurant where the call basically stated that there was a disoriented man who had wandered into the restaurant. It was a black man.
Covered in blood,
acting
soggy
weird.
Shoes.
Walks into the women's bathroom, and there's blood on the walls. He leaves sunglasses behind. And so Officer Meek responds to this, arrives there at about 8:50, takes information through the drive-thru of the restaurant, does not go inside, does not take samples of the blood, does not take photos
Because
of
she
the
also
area.
got her Cajun filet while she was there.
Right.
And a sweet tea. So she might as well just ask while she's going through.
Right.
So,
yeah, so her night was interesting because she gets the call from Mark Byers, then she goes to the chicken restaurant, and then she gets a call for a home being egged.
Yeah, these are so weird, these calls coming in, like all at one time.
Yeah, that was at 9:04 p.m., and then she then takes a statement from Dana Moore at her house because the Moores had called about their son being missing.
Right.
So it just boggles my mind that she goes in response to Mark Byers about his son being missing, and then minutes later she's responding to a strange man near the area. Keep in mind, this restaurant is walking distance from the wooded area where potentially the boys were last seen near or headed to.
Right.
And this guy's covered in blood and disoriented, and she doesn't think to even go inside and check out the bathroom where he was in.
Right.
Where supposedly there's blood.
And he was already gone, so it's not like she was afraid of an altercation or some sort like that or waiting for backup. Like, the guy was already left the restaurant.
This gives you an idea of how strange that the owner of the restaurant thought this was and how it may have been connected, because the next day he actually calls the police department and says that they maybe should further investigate this. Keep in mind, this is after the restaurant bathroom had been cleaned. So it's kind of like much ado about nothing. But they did have this. I believe they had already thrown the sunglasses away too.
Yeah, but they were still able to get some blood samples though.
Right, they were small blood scrapings, but at the time DNA hadn't really advanced much, so they could only make small connections, and they needed a larger amount of blood.
Yeah.
In '93 than they could.
Not like
use
that
now.
mattered anyway because they couldn't even keep up with them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's keeping in mind that these police were at least adept enough to even keep the blood and not lose it.
Right. That's awful.
Unbelievable. The owner of the restaurant would call, and then he would give a better description to, I believe, the chief inspector, Gary Gitchell, who would talk about more.
Yeah.
It was either him or one of the other police officers that responded and took a further report, and they said that this black man who'd wandered the restaurant had been wearing a sling, had supposedly had like some kind of a cast on his arm, and he'd wandered there on foot and left on foot. Very strange.
Yeah.
I mean, you think maybe the sling thing gives maybe a potential reason why he was bleeding.
Right. That's what I was just thinking.
But, it's just a large coincidence.
I don't suspect him as much as I do other characters in this story.
Right.
I don't.
Well,
I mean, I think it's just kind of happenstance, because if you hurt yourself and you're going to be looking for somewhere to clean up, but if you murdered somebody and you're going to clean up, I doubt you're going to leave your sunglasses and blood all over the place. You're going to be You're going to be pretty paranoid about cleaning that up, I would think.
But I mean, you got to think about the crime as well, and the time frame in this crime, knowing that the kids that were being harmed and killed in this situation whoever killed them knew that they were going to be missed immediately, and there was going to be police searching for them immediately. And so if these thing,
so you're thinking he just gave up?
Talking about killing 3 kids.
So you're thinking he just gave up? He was just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to get caught anyway.
No, I'm just saying, like, things get out of hand. Like, if it was to say this guy, and maybe there was another person, there's things that point to there being multiple attackers of these children.
Right.
Say it was this person, and just things get out of hand. You're killing 3 people. They're kids, but at the same time, you've got to find a way to restrain 3 kids and murder them, and then like hide their bodies in the fashion that they were hidden. And things just naturally get out of hand. But that being said, there was water available, so you find it hard.
So what are you saying? You're saying he was disoriented?
I'm saying it's the fact that he was all disoriented and bloody and near the area.
So he just wasn't thinking
tells
clear,
me that
is what you're saying.
It's a decent chance that maybe this person had something to do with it. I mean, it's definitely worth following up on and taking blood samples and all that.
Yeah. It was never even said if he was a local, was it? Or if he was a trucker?
No one knew him, so it was definitely likely that he was from out of town.
Yeah, and nobody would probably bother to ask either. Him being a black man, because like I said, this town, I'm not exaggerating. This town's like over 95% white.
Yeah,
like that's probably why she didn't give a clothing characteristic of the quote unquote black kids that she saw in the woods, because she just was like, oh, they're black. That's enough to identify them right there.
You get several reports of black people being sighted in the area that look suspicious and whatnot, but you almost get the sense that it's like a fear of black people, just like it's a fear of Satanism in this town.
There's no real description of this person. It's like, okay, well, what were they wearing? How tall were they? How long was their hair?
People that want to interject themselves in this scenario, then maybe they just call up and say, I saw a black person in the area. It's like,
oh, okay, thanks.
Was there anything else that was suspicious about them other than the fact that they were black?
Exactly.
Obviously, in this case, there was. This guy's covered in blood and he's acting weird. He's going to the women's bathroom. But there were other calls that the police had received. And then also the daughter, Dawn, who was reported seeing 2 black teens with a white teen coming out, and she only gave a physical description of the white teen and not the 2 black teens.
Yeah.
And there was talk maybe that the 2 other teens, they weren't actually black. They were covered in mud, or they had painted their faces black. Because that's actually what was put at the bottom of the report.
Right.
For this.
It's common in these satanic rituals.
And it tells you a little bit about the mindset of the investigators at the time, that they thought during this a questioning of this daughter, a sister of one of the victims, to put at the bottom. Sometimes, cults, they paint their faces black. It's like you already are considering this a cult crime, right?
Oh, automatically. That was the number one theory, and that was.
Keep in mind, the boys hadn't even been found yet, and they're already
they're already cult.
Yeah. Then that being said, the police, a lot of their questions that they had on paper that were part of the police investigation forms and everything you can look up, their actually time that were written on them and date was like days later. So like either they took these reports at the time this was going on, that the search for the boys was going on and everything, they were talking to people, or they talked to these people and then they a couple days later wrote down what they had discussed, which would be really sketchy if they had done that. Because I mean, obviously you're going to forget little details. You're going to, I think they said this, and
I really think that's what they did. I don't think they saw any of this precursor stuff as very important.
They did a half-ass job, and granted, this was probably not something they're not used to.
It's definitely something they're not
and
used
this
to.
police, it's definitely important to note that this police department was under a lot of scrutiny at this time. They were under investigation by state police for a lot of corruption within their police department. They had been stealing confiscated weapons and drugs, and they'd been caught doing it. Many of them. They were under investigation by state police, and they refused. After the boys had come up missing, the state police called Gary Gitchell and offered their help with the investigation. And
they're like, no.
Gitchell turned them down.
We don't need you poking around over here.
Right.
That's exactly right. They just didn't want to. There's a lot. There can be a lot of shady shit going down in a small town. Especially rural small towns. There's not many outsiders poking their head in. Everybody's kind of connected. Everybody knows everybody. It's easy to hide stuff.
Right. So the police reports are in. We have the weird situation at Bojangles, and you still have John Mark Byers, and he's kind of teamed up with Terry Hobbs, and they've been searching around. Also, John Mark Byers has been going around with his other stepson, Sean Clark, who's I believe 16 years old. He's a few years older.
Right.
And they have been searching the woods, and it's getting late. And at a certain point, John Mark Byers reports that he told his son, Sean, to go home and go to bed because he had school the next day.
Right.
And that's kind of disputed. Some people think that Sean was still out with him searching late into the night. I think Mark didn't return until like 2 or 3 a.m. He'd been trudging around in the woods in there, which looks, depending on how you look at it, it looks suspect. But when I really think about it, I'm like, as a parent, I'd probably be doing the same shit. I would go to the area where
I wouldn't be able to sleep at all.
No, hell no. And I'd be searching probably the woods because I would know that my kid had been going there a lot.
Yep.
And if no one's seen them anywhere else, where else are they going to be? They'd been known to have like a tree house or a fort or something in there.
Yeah.
Some kind of a hideout.
Right.
And we know there's sketchy characters because of the truck stop nearby. So you're just,
I know. It is crazy that they even let their kids play over there in the woods. But
right.
You just, in that small town, man, you don't think of anything like that happening. Everybody's looking out for everybody, at the same time.
Yeah. So it gets late into the night. John Mark Byers finally returns home, but he's not able to sleep. Early, a few hours later, like 5, 6 a.m., Michael Moore, his dad, Todd, had finally returned from his truck driving expedition, and they came along with Terry Hobbs and Pamela Hobbs as well. They all showed up to the Byers' house. It's now morning, early morning, and they want to get the search back on. The police are also planning on having a wide search for these. They've got I don't know how every officer that they have available.
All
is
6
going to be
of them.
a part of this search. Yeah, all 6 of them, and they do an extensive search of this 4-mile or 4-acre patch of woods known as Robin Hood Hills.
Right, and this is where they find their first clue, isn't it?
Well, they search all day.
They search?
I mean, this is really densely wooded. And there's it was there for drainage. So there's kind of a muddy ravine that goes through it.
Oh yeah.
Murky water with pipes and stuff. It's a sketchy ass patch of woods. It really is.
Yeah.
And so they're searching this thing all day and they're not seeing anything. And it's getting later in the day and they're, thinking about calling off the search of the wooded area. When a guy named Steve Jones, who was a juvenile police officer, actually finds a children's shoe. It looks to be about the shoe of a kid of the age of the missing children. And so he finds this shoe, and it's like on an embankment, and it's near the muddy water.
Yeah.
And so he sees the shoe, and he shows it to the other officers, and Bryn Ridge, who was a police officer with the department, starts searching the watery area.
He immediately starts wading in the water, doesn't he?
Yeah, I want to say that Steve Jones, when he had found the shoe, he slipped and his foot went in there and he felt something in the water.
Yeah.
And so he told Bryn Ridge what he had found and showed him the shoe, and Bryn Ridge then got into the water and started feeling around, at which point he felt a body in there.
Yeah.
And they started pulling bodies out. I can't recall which one was found first. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
They find all 3 bodies of the children, Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore.
Right. And then they also find articles of clothing that were wrapped around sticks and stabbed into the mud.
The kids, I believe, had been
places.
held down underwater with the sticks somehow. Must have been somehow tied to the sticks, because if you think about it, their bodies would have floated. They were somehow held underwater with these sticks as well. And some of them were known to be sharpened.
Oh, they probably wrapped parts of no, because they were all stripped, weren't they?
Yeah, they were all nude.
Were nude. They were probably tied to this.
There was a few articles of clothing that were missing. I believe 2 pairs of underwear were missing and a pair of socks or something. But the boys were hogtied in a sense, not traditionally. They were hogtied where their right hand and their right ankle were
Right.
tied together, and their left hand and their left ankle, which is tied together.
Yeah.
Which is not common. It's a little.
Also, all the knots were different.
Well,
which suggested
two
that,
of the kids were tied up the same.
Yeah.
And the third was tied up with two different knots.
I thought they were all tied a little bit different, though.
No, two were exactly the same knots.
Okay.
And then a third, one of the other children were tied,
Right.
and both each side was different knots. So that kind of pointed to multiple offenders in a sense, because if you think about when you tie something, you probably do the same knot.
Okay. So the kid that was tied different, but his right hand and right foot were tied different from his left hand and left foot. Okay. That's what I was thinking, because I knew there were 3 different style knots in it.
Right.
You know,
exactly. But
amongst
2
them.
were tied exactly the same. Both their hands, both their ankles. Yeah, everything was. There was signs of just massive trauma to all of these children. There was, they had stab wounds. One of them had stab wounds on his face.
Right.
There was what was later discovered to be bite mark on, I want to say, Michael Moore's eye. But it was originally called a belt, some sort of a buckle, like a lashing from a belt. But when you look at it, it always looked like a bite mark to me.
Yeah, did it?
It did. Did it not to you? Did you see?
No, I totally think it did.
Pictures.
I just don't know how they missed it, is what I'm getting at. I don't know how you think that's not a bite mark.
Right. Well, they say if you look at it, because they were looking at it 2D, they were looking at the picture as a picture, and they weren't considering the fact that your eye socket goes in.
Right.
And so if you were to bite, it would make kind of a square from the front. It would look like a square, but ultimately it was rounded because of the depth of your eye socket.
Right.
But they were they were full of shit. Honestly, I don't know if maybe it was just a half-assed job by the medical examiner or the police. It looked like a bite mark. You could see little teeth.
You could see the indentions and then the spaces.
Below his eye, you could see little teeth marks. Mm-hmm. And that to me is a giant sign, and it's been shown time and time again, of some sort of a parental offense. A lot of times you find bite marks on children where their mother had gone crazy on them and harmed them. They will bite their children. It's a very maternal, paternal type offense to a child, in my opinion. I don't think you do that to strangers very often. So if it's a sexual, I guess there's a sexual nature, there could be.
Right.
But to me, it just says something about it being a family member. That's a big one to me.
Really?
It really does, yeah.
So you think only a family member would have bite? Who had the bite mark?
Not necessarily, but
was it Christopher? It was Christopher, wasn't it?
No, I believe it was Michael Moore that had the bite mark.
Oh, okay.
Now, Christopher Byers had the worst of the beatings. He had actually been mutilated.
Yeah.
He had actually, his penis had been, his testicles had been removed, his scrotum had been removed, and then the head of his penis had been removed, and it was just like a shaft with no skin.
Right.
And this is all you can it's very graphic, but if you've seen the Paradise Lost films, they show all of this. Yeah. It's kind of shocking what they show, man.
It's kind of important at the same time, because the skill that it would take to do something like this.
That's also disputed.
Doesn't seem...
That's been disputed as well, because the medical examiner Frank Peretti went on the stand. He said that it looked as though it would take a scalpel and some time for him to do this.
Yeah.
But then later on, the defense gets their own professional in the field, and he says that this is not a professional. This is more of a stabbing manner with a small knife, and that it was done very quickly and not in a professional manner. And so there's a lot of dispute on that.
So you mean the prosecution?
No,
would have gotten him, right? Because that would go in the favor of the prosecution if they said that it was somebody with no expertise, because then that would
you
be
would think,
blaming
but
the
no,
kids.
the defense got their own expert later and said that this was
I thought that guy was from the prosecution. Wow.
Well, no, because during the defense,
then they both
during the original trial, right?
Yeah.
The whole mutilation thing, the defense was trying to say that this would take a lot of time and a lot of work, and it was one of his reasons why that these 3 kids didn't do this in the dark and yada yada. And it was done elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the medical examiner kind of backed him up on that, and it was part of the defense.
Yeah.
But
that's what I said.
But much later, the defense attorney Dan Stidham, with help of the West Memphis Three
so the defense brought both the experts in.
They brought in their own expert. He looked at him and he's going, in my opinion, this is done really quickly. It's shoddy work.
I wouldn't have even let him testify.
He didn't testify. Okay, look, this is well after. This is after they've already been locked up.
Okay.
This new expert came in and said, he's looking at these and he's going, they were wrong in the original defense saying that this was done meticulously. It wasn't.
Gotcha.
So anyway, Christopher Byers was mutilated. That points to potentially someone
And he's
having
the only
more
one
of
that was.
He was the only one that was, and he actually died from bleeding out. He died from blood loss.
Right.
And the other two died from drowning, according to the medical examiner Frank Peretti. And he kept a lot of this stuff to himself. He didn't release stuff like he should have because he knew the magnitude of this case.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of little weirdness about Frank Peretti, the medical examiner.
He's probably catching a little payoff.
It took forever for Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell to get these reports on what had happened from the autopsy.
Right.
So that's kind of like where you go. You know, you start with all of the medical examiner's reports on
absolutely
what happened to these kids. Was it a sexual crime?
It took him forever, too. It took him forever to even get any of this started. So that makes you wonder, too. It's like, what took so long?
Right.
These bodies were still pretty fresh.
Gary Gitchell didn't know time of death. He didn't know cause of death necessarily. Maybe he knew cause of death, but he didn't know what was really done to these boys specifically.
Right.
He was given.
And weren't there certain
basically
things
nothing
that had no evidence of that were rumors started either by him or by somebody else? Like,
well, what happened was, the disconnect between the state and local police.
Right.
How the local police said they didn't want help from the state police. The state police had overheard the transmissions. Somehow they found out the details of the case.
Right.
And they weren't correct 100%. They were under the impression that all three boys were mutilated, and they let word out. And by the next morning,
that was already printed, right?
Or on May 6th or May 7th, a day after the murders, it was put in all the local newspapers and media that all three boys were some sort of, they were all mutilated, and that's where a lot of
didn't they say that they had urine in their stomachs?
Yes, that was also.
But yet that was never tested or.
Right, they didn't take water samples from their stomachs.
Yeah, no water samples. They just said that there was urine found in their stomachs, or at least two of the boys.
There's so much that leaves you wondering, like, how much urine? Like, was it an amount where, like, if they had been swallowing water because they were drowning, and someone had peed in the river or in that water recently, was it that amount? Because I mean,
it's more than that.
That's a true, like, real sexual deviant crime to be, you have these boys be swallowing urine from whoever killed them. That just seems kind of far fetched to me. It's potential. It's very likely that people pee in that water. I've never heard anyone bring this up, but it's very possible that pee made its way into that water, whether it was an animal or a human.
But that's a natural stream,
and that they swallowed that water because they were drowning.
Yeah, maybe, but that's like a natural stream. That water's moving.
It was drainage. It was stagnant.
Was it stagnant?
In some parts, it was stagnant. It looked stagnant where they were found to me.
Okay, well maybe then. Hell, it could have been fucking.
Or even if it was moving, it could have. There still could have been urine in it, small traces. Like how much amount? There's just so many things that leave you wondering.
The fact that was never followed up just blew me away, though.
Right.
Like we need to find out whose urine that is.
There was so much that left you hanging. Like later on in the trial, Bryn Ridge was brought on.
Aggravates the fuck out of me.
Right. Well, Bryn Ridge was put on the stand later in trial and asked about the. Bojangles restaurant and the blood, because they later did after being.
This is pathetic.
After being called again by the owner of the Bojangles restaurant, Bryn Ridge responded and got small traces of blood and lost them.
Lost them.
They were never sent to be examined.
Never tested, nothing.
Never sent to be analyzed.
And then it was just, oh well.
Right.
Guess we'll just move on.
My bad.
And that's literally what he said on the stand. Just, that was my fault. I lost them.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
Right. And so initially, Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell is kind of hampered. He's got a messy crime scene. It took the coroner 2 hours to respond. They weren't supposed to take the bodies out of the water right away. They were supposed to, when you find that there's bodies in there, you're supposed to have it sandbagged and drained and collect the water there.
Right.
And get any evidence you can find out of that. They just pulled the bodies out. They left them sitting. It went from 60 degrees in the water to 80 degrees outside. You've got mosquitoes everywhere because of the area, and you're in the woods. Now, there was little to no blood found near the crime scene on that embankment,
which is impossible for those type of injuries.
Which seems impossible just for the Christopher Byers injuries alone. For the mutilation, and the fact that he bled out, you would have had, I would think, pints of blood.
And the other boy stabbed in the face.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it was bad.
I mean, honestly, you've ever cut your forehead bleeds forever. Yeah. Like,
right.
Yeah, there would be a shit ton of blood.
Yeah, they found that it was a serrated knife. Because there was like little spots where there was indentions that represented a serrated knife.
Right.
So yeah, he's hampered by just what little evidence is found at the scene. Whoever did this did a good job of cleaning it up, and they tried their best to disguise the bodies. So it was actually kind of impressive that the bodies were found as soon as they were. If it weren't for that shoe, who knows how long it would have been before people went into the water and actually started searching parts where there was water.
And it would have been too late.
Yeah, it might have been
way
days
too late. Well,
or
it's
more.
still too late apparently,
Right.
to have solid evidence. But
yeah, and so he's still waiting on the chief inspector's medical examination review and everything, and so they start just doing interviews of anybody and everybody, but they don't interview the families enough, in my opinion, which I think that's an issue with these small towns. You know what I mean? Where the police, they know everybody, they know the
right.
like,
Everybody's on a first name basis.
Yeah, so it's like they don't want to like. I feel like part of the problem was that they really didn't want to cast any suspicion on the family members, which is understandable, but it's part of your job.
Well, what will they say at church, Lauren?
Right. Honestly, like
Just go.
they really didn't extensively question any of the parents.
No, they didn't.
They just got it seemed like they got quick statements and they just assumed their innocence.
Yeah, their houses should have been
Which
searched. The boys'
ultimately,
room should have been searched.
When you have a crime like this to a child, like the initial, like the first place to go is the family members, right?
Absolutely.
So, and John Mark Byers was known to be, he was a violent man. He had a violent past. And he had admitted
a shady past.
He'd immediately admitted to the police that he had abused his kid that day. It depends on your outlook on abuse, I guess. If you believe in swatting and spanking or whatever, but it seemed like it was overboard because later they talked about they had found some lines on Christopher Byers that were believed to be from him, that were like kind of like welty lines from his so-called.
So apparently he used some sort of a studded belt. It seemed like.
Yeah, and there was also markings on the bodies that
just pretty ridiculous.
Were initially disputed as studs,
right,
on all three boys, and so there's just things that. It just seems like they really didn't question the family enough or like press hard enough on some of these characters, like Terry Hobbs, who's also later found to be quite a violent man himself.
Right.
But the background of John Mark Byers is something that it was kind of hidden and put away. He had been in and out of the court systems. He had gotten a lot of help from judges and police. He had done a lot of things in the past that's
a huge
understatement. Were swept under the rug.
Didn't he default on his child support from his first wife, and then it was just all forgiven?
There was years back during his first marriage where there was a police response during a dispute with his wife where the police officer responded and showed up to wherever he was living, walked in, and he was standing over his wife who was screaming, and he had some sort of an electric...
He had like a taser.
A taser type thing, and he was threatening her life.
Yeah.
And he was jailed for this, and the charges were later dropped because he had this intertwined relationship with the police. He'd become some sort of an informant for local police.
He was some sort of drug informant
He's
for a while.
He's one of those guys that knew everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so like he had these relationships with the police where like all this suspect stuff he would be doing, he was known to steal from, like, he worked for a jewelry store with his wife.
Yep.
And he went up under charges from the owners of the store for theft. And those were dropped. You know, it's just like
he tried to open his own jewelry store for a little while, and that failed.
Right.
That was shady. I think he was just using it to launder money.
Right. And so the police really don't look hard enough into them. They don't really press them, but they are kind of like searching for outsiders and anybody weird in a sense.
Right. Well, in a way, John Mark is kind of leading that charge.
John Mark Byers?
Yeah, he's kind of leading that charge of, let's find him. It's got to be a devil worshiper. Like, he's kind of...
Well, that's the whole area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but he's kind of leading it, though.
I think once the state police had let the information out that all three boys were mutilated, that it became this perverse obsession with this very religious town. Yeah. They had this very creepy infatuation with mutilation, and it was like immediately the devil's work, you know?
Because that's what you default to, man. When you're raised in that type of area, you just default to that. You don't believe that evil just resides in everyone. You can't.
You can't believe that a parent could do this.
There has to be an excuse. It's like, oh my God, I don't live in a place where this could happen. There has to be an outlet. Oh, okay, let's just say it's Satan. It's got to be Satan, right? He's not from here. He doesn't have any power over me because I'm a Christ follower, so I'm not that afraid of him. But he can get to other people.
Well, this is near the end of the Satanic Panic, and there was already talks of a cult being in town. There was a lot of rumblings about this and that, and people being seen in those woods doing seances and like sacrificing animals and this and that. And there was no real proof of any of that.
No.
But it didn't matter. The fact that their boys were found in the woods and then information got out that the three of them were mutilated, I think the police just latched on and the media immediately latched on to this being a satanic ritualistic killing of these three boys, because boys being sacrificed represents more power for the satanic religion or whatever.
Right.
The fact that it was a full moon, like these things started to kind of add up. Yeah, these things started to kind of add up, and in comes a guy named Jerry Driver, who was a juvenile probation officer and had been tracking the whereabouts of some youth in the area for a long time and had some like very strong beliefs in cults, and thought that they were alive and well, and thought that a few members of this community could be responsible for this. And he gave a handwritten list to the police. I believe he gave it to Gary Gitchell or one of his underlings, a list, and said that the perpetrators of this crime are on this list.
Right. And this is a list of 8. This is out of nowhere. This man has no evidence whatsoever. This is just like, hey, these are 8 people that, I've followed around and they do some weird stuff. So check them out.
This guy in my mind is probably one of the largest driving forces behind these 3 kids getting locked up. Jerry Driver handing them this list. It just kind of confirmed their ideas of this being a ritualistic killing, and that some weird youth that were up to no good in the area.
It's like all the police needed. They just need a little push in that direction, and then that's all they needed.
Now, one of the ringleaders of this weirdness in the area, and probably the one the police had their eye on the most and couldn't stand, was a young man named Damian Eccles, who at the time, what was he, 17 at the time?
I think he was 18.
18 at the time. They interview him on May 7th, which was a day after the boys' bodies were found, 2 days after they went missing. They interview him along with his then girlfriend, Dominique Tier, and they interview him at the West Memphis Police Department. And during this interview, he was being young and dumb, in my opinion.
He wasn't helping himself.
He really wasn't. He heard through the media that these boys were mutilated and this and that. And so they're asking him these leading questions about, who do you think did this? What type of person would do this? And he's giving all of these profound opinions, because he'd been reading into all kinds of dark subjects.
You're talking about a boy who's into this kind of thing. He's not doing it, but he likes to study. I mean, like you right now listening to this podcast.
Right.
Like you obviously like this kind of shit, and he is no different.
Right.
Like he just looked into this kind of stuff. He knew about rituals. He studied all sorts of religions, including Christianity, Catholicism, and
Wicca.
Wicca, which is
more naturistic than anything which we've talked about in the past.
But dude, you mentioned Wicca in the Southeast.
Oh yeah, especially in the early 90s. You're gonna get some funny
looks, man. Still now. I mean, people pass by everybody knows where that Wicca church is. It's like, don't go over there.
Right.
Like, it's so misunderstood. It's just ignorance.
Right.
It's nothing but ignorance.
Well, so they interview him, and then he's saying that this person who would do this would most likely feel some sort of power from doing it. Obviously, they wanted to do it, so they felt power doing it. That they probably mutilated the boys, and that they were killed because it was taking life from children. He says all these things that are just kind of vague.
It's like, dude, you're not a fucking criminal minds consultant over here. Like,
he acted like he was some sort of FBI profiler.
You're not helping your case
right now.
I
think he had a huge ego, this kid, and he had some severe mental issues. So let's go into those.
Okay.
So they interview him, and it doesn't look good, especially something that they use against him later, because I think he really thought he was helping them.
He did
at first.
Yeah. Because, I mean, okay, you take this either two ways. You take it one where he's so innocent that he's confident and he can say whatever he wants because he thinks he's helping. Or you're like, this kid is so fucking guilty and he does not care. Like, this is what he believes. He truly believes that he's going to have a place in hell, which he never mentioned. Right. Never mentioned that he was a Satanist or anything like that.
Right.
And they took the latter, obviously. But me and you listening to it, we're thinking like, okay, this kid's so innocent.
Right.
That he doesn't feel endangered by telling you what he feels about the case.
Right. Well, Damien had a severe background of mental health issues. He had severe depression, and at this point where the police are interrogating him or questioning him, he's actually on full disability from the government for a mental disability. Like he had applied for it and given proof that he was suicidal and even homicidal and had violent thoughts and this and that. And he was wasn't he on an antidepressant at the time? And so he actually was getting like $280 a month or something from the government.
Right. And this combined with being dirt poor as well. So like kids were picking on him at school. So he wanted to find a way. I think I don't know. I think he took the interest in all of these strange religions and not strange religions, but and all these stuff together is kind of weird. The stuff that he would fit together, you know, like the different cultures and things. I think he was doing that because he was like, it just kept people away.
Oh yeah, no. He said that he would carry the dog.
If I'm going to be different, I'm going to be different.
He said that he was picked on when he was younger, and he decided at a certain point it was easier just to keep people away by being weird than to deal with them. So that's like part of the reason why he started carrying around a dog skull. He said that he just found it.
And you see that with some kids where they think like, it's like if they get picked on for trying to be cool, then they're just like, well, fuck it.
Yeah,
I'm just going to be completely weird. At least I'm controlling what you pick on me for.
And maybe I'll find a few weirdos to hang out with that are in the same boat as me. And he managed to do that.
Yeah.
And so more about his background, though, because we really don't want to skip over the fact that, you know, we're not completely writing off the idea that Damien could have been a part of this.
Right.
Because he did some severe, I mean, he was manic depressant. He was in and out of mental institutions when he was younger. He had a criminal history. I mean,
he could have had a blackout.
He could have.
He could have had a blackout.
He could have had a manic episode where he felt like God and did this.
He could have, absolutely.
100%. And so some of his background, he had a girlfriend back in a few years back, like one of his first girlfriends, whose parents couldn't stand him, and supposedly he made threats towards her parents after they forced the girlfriend to break up with him.
Right.
And at which points their story is that he had made threats that he was going to kill them, kill their daughter, and this and that. He then started dating her again, and she ran away with him, and they were held up in some like trailer that was abandoned, and they got caught there, and they got arrested for burglary and lewd acts because they were found pantless at the time.
Right.
They were squatting in like an abandoned home, and so he got jailed for that, and then he ended up in a mental institution. The family, for a short time, his family moved to Oregon. His parents had admitted him for threatening them as well.
Yeah. He hated that.
And this is Jerry Driver's kind of his probationary officer during this whole time, and he's saying things to Jerry that are very concerning to him, to say the least. You know, Jerry believes this dude is capable of some really scary things. That's why he gives this list, because by the time that these kids come up missing, Damien has since returned. He got released by the Oregon. Every time he was in an mental institution, he would act completely normal, and they would say, after like a short amount of time, he was acting so out of the norm or in the norm, I would say.
Right.
He was not showing any signs of someone who should be locked up.
That's why I think he's innocent. I don't think he's really like that crazy.
You think he liked the image of being a weirdo more than he liked actually being weird?
He was like, just leave me alone. He just wanted to be left alone, and he figured that.
And I think he also liked messing with authority figures too. Like he got off on.
Oh well, yeah.
You even see during the trial when he doesn't think that there's no way they're going to lock him up because they don't have any evidence. You see him in the trial like smiling, laughing, and like.
But that's part of being a teenager.
I know.
Too,
that's my point. Is like he liked fucking with authority figures. He knew how serious they were taking everything, and he thought it was absurd because they had no evidence that he had done this, and they just were putting him on trial for doing nothing, and he was calling it a second Salem and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so
I'm smoking his cigarette, looking.
I'm totally with you on that. I'm totally with you in that. Like, I think his own real, true personal beliefs is like he thought there was good and evil, but he just liked studying history, and he was different than everyone in the area, no doubt. But I think he was mainly harmless.
Right. He just enjoyed Stephen King and different novels like that.
He would find weird books at the local library that were put on sale for a dime because nobody else wanted to be seen reading them. He would buy them and read them and form his own opinions. He said that one of his beliefs at the time was that, like, why do we know that our God is the God? Like that type of, when you're a teenager and you start questioning everything you've been taught, that's what he was in.
Oh, don't you dare.
Right. And so the Oregon Institute had said, you're good to go. You're released. And so he went back to Arkansas without, I think his parents for a little while stayed in Oregon, and he went back to Arkansas.
Yeah, he hated Oregon.
And lived with like his, another family member, an uncle or something.
Which is strange. You think he would like Oregon being as like liberal minded as he was and how different?
Right.
You think?
Why would he want to go back to?
If he would have,
maybe he liked being the outcast. That's probably why he wanted to go back.
I think it was just friends. I think he just missed Jason. He missed his girlfriend.
Yeah. So Jason Baldwin was at the time his best friend, and they'd been friends for years, and they pretty much did everything together. Baldwin introduced him to Metallica, actually, and he introduced Baldwin to Pink Floyd, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's a more, like, Pink Floyd's more eclectic, drug-using type of, it's not as, like, dark and heavy as, like, Metallica is. In my opinion.
Right.
And so it kind of says something there.
Does it?
I think Baldwin was more the metalhead, honestly.
Yeah, Baldwin was that quiet kid that you might have to worry about. He seemed like the little like do-gooder henchman type friend, but I don't know. I feel like he would snap on some kid and like stab him with a fork in the cafeteria or some shit, you know.
But he had like.
But I don't think he did this.
No, because I mean, he had literally like he was an average student.
Yeah,
he was his parents
actually above average student.
His mom loved him. Like teachers loved him. I mean, he'd been in some like little petty things. Like I think he stole candy from a store, like stupid shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And him and Damien, like this is the early '90s. There's nothing to do. They would just wander around and get into weird stuff.
Yeah.
But nothing that ever showed any.
They're like, we never knew what we were gonna do. We would just.
They had no money, so they would go to like concerts and hang out outside and like try to meet girls and stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they were the type that would like print out covers of CDs and like use them as posters on their wall. They would like print them and like tape them together, and you know what I mean? They probably smoked some weed when they got their hands on it. That type of thing.
For sure. But Jason seemed like such a just a decent kid to me, man.
All the way through.
All his interviews, when you look at this kid, it's like, there's no way.
Right, yeah. I mean, you hate to judge a book like that, like without really knowing a person, but like all signs for me, like just the sense I get when I hear him talk, I'm just like, yeah, I'm with you. I'm like, there's no way.
This kid would not hurt a fly. Like,
and then you hear fucking Mark Byers, who is like lying every second of every day, and he's a different person, like when the camera's on, or he's different when the cameras are off. He's different around his wife. He's different around the cops.
He's different at church.
He's different with every person. He's just...
Yeah.
You'd say he becomes what they want him to be, but I don't even know if that's the right thing. He becomes just a caricature all the time.
It's like he's hiding something.
I don't
dark.
have a doubt that he was capable of doing this because he was already shown such violent tendencies. The cop that responded to that threatening and like abuse of his former wife said that the things he was saying that the cop heard him saying while he was standing over his wife made him believe that this was truly capable. And there was people all the way to the end after these boys were convicted that kept coming forward and saying, I totally believe Mark Byers is capable of this.
What about in the interview in the documentary where he's shooting the pumpkin and the milk jug and stuff, and that speech right there that he goes on?
Yeah, you're talking about Paradise Lost.
Yeah, in Paradise Lost, if you guys...
The first one.
Definitely check out the documentary. This is the first one.
Big revolver. I don't know if it was a 44 mag or whatever it was, but he had like round slugs that were not your typical projectile, and they were untraceable because every slug was a little bit different.
Yep.
And he was saying that as a good thing. Like, you couldn't trace these bullets.
You couldn't trace these bullets. And he's talking about how he would shoot them. But in the book we read, Devil's Knot. Who wrote that?
Devil's Knot by Mara Leverett, The True Story of the West Memphis Three.
Yes, excellent book. It's pretty non-biased, really. I'd say it's probably more...
I'd say it had a slant towards them being innocent. But, I mean, she used a lot of evidence to show that...
But then again, if you just use the evidence, it's going to feel like they're innocent, if you have any common sense.
All the information we got about Damien's background...
Yeah.
And like all the negative stuff about him that makes him look suspicious came from this book as well. So she just displayed the facts, but you could tell her opinion was that they were innocent.
Right.
And I don't think there's anybody that would say that they got convicted with actual
No.
In most courts in this country, they would not have been convicted.
Absolutely not. Just lack of evidence.
Perfect storm of time and place and
right. But real quick, while I brought up this book, I was talking about the John Mark speech.
Yeah.
In the book, the author had said that she spoke with the producers of the HBO of the documentary. That's who did the documentary Paradise Lost, and they said that they had to cut that scene because he just went on and on and on. And when they played that scene
to the wives,
to their wives, they literally had to walk away. Their wives couldn't even watch it. Yeah. Like that's how sickening it was. I guess them and their wives were the only ones that had seen.
Well, HBO followed him into Robin Hood Hills, where the boys were murdered, followed him in there, and he was going on this diatribe.
I want to see it.
On this long diatribe in his overalls, and later in Paradise Lost 2, Revelations, he's out there and he's like sticking sticks into the ground with the caution tape and like lighting them on fire, and they're representing Damien and Jason and
this guy, he either loves the cameras or he's got some.
There's more. Issues. There's more we're gonna get into in a bit about him and his suspicion. I mean, so basically the police interviewed Damien and it doesn't look good. We went into his background and why. I mean, you can see why he ended up on a list, on Jerry Driver's list. But at the same time, the police seemed like they'd already, the second that they interviewed him, they had made up their mind that he was a part of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just a matter of now being able to, because he was completely unwilling to say that he had any part in it. He denied completely because, as we believe, he didn't have anything to do with it. But Yeah, so I mean, he was saying that he was giving them information on the type of person that might do it, but he was, he said that he had an alibi that he was hanging out with Jason Baldwin, and they were at like Jason's uncle's house, and Jason was like mowing the lawn, and they were just here and there, and they were seen by people during this time.
Right.
So the police had also talked to Jason, who said the same thing, corroborated Damien's story about where they were and who they were seen with, but the police really didn't care.
Right.
So they interviewed Damien a couple times. They interview him again on the 9th and on the 10th, and they're breaking like a lot of rules and laws of the police and the rights of this potential suspect,
right?
Because they're refusing to have his lawyer be there, even though he's requesting a lawyer over and over again. And basically, his mother, fearing that he's been at the police station all day, being held by them, questioned, calls a lawyer. Calls a lawyer. The lawyer shows up to the police station and is refused and says that the police station's closed. This is the kind of stuff that's going on.
It's shady stuff, man.
Yeah.
They're ramrodding these kids.
Yeah, and so the police are kind of desperate at this point. That Gary Gitchell had sent a letter to the chief examiner or the medical examiner, Frank Peretti,
right,
saying that we really have our head in the sand with this case. We need something from you. And so just like it seems like there's a lot of pressure on them.
They're panicking right here. This is the panic.
They've already made their mind up that this is a cult crime. That there's some weirdos like Damien Eccles that had done this, and they kind of already pretty much assumed Damien did it. They want to prove it, but he's not telling them that they did it. Jesse Baldwin's not telling them that they did it. Jason Baldwin's not telling them they did it. Now another name on their list, and someone that they had known to occasionally hang out with Baldwin and Eccles, was a kid named Jesse Miss Kelly. And this kid, Jesse's an interesting character.
He is.
Also an outcast himself, but
and for a different reason though.
Yeah,
this kid, he was a little slower.
Super poor family,
right?
And very
uneducated,
very slow.
Yeah,
uneducated, but just has mental deficiencies. Like
school wasn't a big focus for his family.
It was very hard for him. He had an IQ in the low 70s, approximately 72 or 73. He just he had very severe
for
writing.
that reason, he fought a lot, and he was a tough ass kid.
He had a lot of reading and writing issues, and got into a lot of fights. He was that was kind of how he made friends. We were joking about it before the show.
They said the only person he would not fight was his dad.
Right.
Yeah.
He would fight family members to his dad's amusement. He would like throw up beer bottles and punch them in the air and try to break them just to impress people. He was that type of
it's a party trick.
Yeah.
Hey, watch this.
Hard-nosed, redneck, uneducated kid.
Yeah.
That liked violence for fun, and he had a lot of violent outbursts. Like he would get angry and just punch holes in things. And
they would refer to this back there. They would refer to this as all boy. Right. In quotations. Yeah. That's the excuse you give. Oh, he all boy. That's all.
Yeah. So they pick him up and they talk to him and his dad, and they tell his dad that they're going to go ask him some questions.
Right.
And they make it seem very harmless, and they even kind of allude to a $35,000 reward if he's able to give them information leading to whoever did this.
Which was pretty shitty because they knew that would play to their...
They knew exactly what they were doing. And there's
family, that's life-changing for them, $35,000.
There's even talk about, if you give us information, your dad can buy a new truck. You can get your dad a new truck with that $35,000.
Yeah.
And so that's how they start this thing. And they take him off, and his dad allows him to just, they don't officially have his dad sign any forms or anything, but his dad watches him go off to the police station, and they read him his rights, but they don't have a parent. He's only 16 at the time.
No parent there, no lawyer there.
No parent signs off on
He waives his rights.
He waives his rights, and they start questioning him for around 12 hours. They're pounding this kid.
Real quick, this is a kid who doesn't know who Bill Clinton is.
Yeah, he didn't know who the president was.
In the mid-'90s.
Yeah.
When Bill Clinton was president. And wasn't he from Arkansas?
Yeah. I want to say the Clintons were from Arkansas.
I'm pretty sure Bill Clinton was from Arkansas.
I think at one point he was like...
wasn't he the governor of Arkansas?
Yeah, I think so.
He did not know who Bill Clinton was.
Yeah.
Just to give you guys...
an idea of
how disconnected he is. He did not know what a lawyer was.
Right. Now, what's super sketchy, on top of everything we've already talked about this, the local police department's practices about questioning these people with no lawyer present, with no parental waivers signed about, a 16-year-old being questioned for hours on end.
Right.
They didn't record the first... Now, I've heard many different numbers. I've heard 5 hours. I've heard 12 hours.
Yeah.
It was all day. They were questioning him.
Well, they were conditioning him, but yeah.
But yet there's only 46 minutes recorded.
Right.
And it was the last 46 minutes where they got what they wanted.
Well, they had to make sure they get his story straight.
Right.
Make sure
His
they
story was
get
all over.
his story straight.
Even in this last 46 minutes in this recording, his story was all over the place. The times were all over the place.
Huge details too. We're not talking about just little mishaps like, oh, maybe 3, maybe 3:30. No, we're talking about like completely
9 a.m. He
different
says
times a day.
So the gist of it is he basically tells them that he was present during this murder. He says that that Jason and Damien had called him in the morning and said, we're gonna go hang out and do this or that, meet us at the woods. And he says that he met up with them at 9 a.m. And immediately the police start saying, "Are you sure it was 9 a.m.?"
Because the 8-year-old
kids
boys
were in school
went
at that
to school.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they start kind of like, in a very weird way, you have to listen to it to really understand. We can't.
They put words in his mouth. They say, well, are you sure it wasn't this? Or they'll ask a question and they'll add details in the question.
They're
so
giving
he'll
him the
repeat
answers.
it back.
They're giving him the answers to the test. And then you got to figure he's exhausted. They've been burnt. They've been basically 2 trained police officers who've been in the business for a long time are working with a kid with a 70 IQ. It's very reminiscent of Making a Murderer.
Oh, yes.
The nephew.
Yeah.
Very, very similar situation where they know what they're doing. They're leading him on. They're giving him the answers to the test, and they know that he's dumb enough to go ahead and roll with that. He's trying to get them to basically get off his back. What do I have to tell you to get out of here? Because he doesn't realize that people can be convicted without any evidence.
Right.
He's thinking the same thing Damien was when he was being interviewed.
Yeah.
Damien's a little slicker and he knows not to say that he was there or anything like that.
Right.
But he's thinking, I'll tell him whatever gets them to leave me alone and I'll go home and, they can't prove that I did anything because I didn't do it.
Exactly.
And so he tells them basically, we was there, and first he says 9 a.m. and then they finally beat him down until he says that it was in the evening.
Yeah, it was like maybe 3.
And
how
then,
did you get 9 a.m. I don't know.
And then he gives this silly story of like, we was in the woods and these 3 kids were there and then all of a sudden Damien starts beating on this one real bad and starts screwing him and stuff. And it's like, how do we jump from...
Yeah, he just
started
escalated quickly.
Yeah, he started beating him and then he just started screwing him.
And if you see
no other details here,
Damien doesn't look like he gets in a hurry for shit.
Right.
He seems like the most laid back, chill kid ever. Does he not though? Doesn't seem like he gets wound up about anything.
He does, but we talked about him being manic depressant and maybe a manic
Yeah, but we didn't
episode,
see any evidence of that though.
No, we didn't.
Maybe he did, but he never said anything that made me think that he just goes off the wall or has these crazy hyper episodes or
right. Well, on the recording, that's what he says. We was there, and Damien started punching and beating on this one real bad, and then started screwing him and stuff. That's
his
how
statement.
He says and then Jason Baldwin grabbed the other one and started pretty much doing the same. Started beating on him real bad,
right.
and then he says that one of the boys, I want to say it was Michael Moore, tried to run away, and he chased him down. He admits being a part of this now.
Well, he says that's his only involvement, though.
But that's enough.
That's huge involvement.
That's 100% enough.
Right.
Because if not, in the police's eyes, Michael Moore gets away and he's not dead. So you're now on the hook for murder as well.
You're in a compass. Yeah.
And so that's how unwitting he is, not realizing he just implemented himself into this crime by saying that he chased down one of the kids, grabbed him, and brought him back.
Yeah.
And the police, in their opinion, now got this whole case. They've got a confession from somebody who was there, supposedly, even though in the back of their minds they must know that they led him to this.
They had to have. Hours and hours of conditioning him all day to say the things they wanted him to say. Why not record the whole thing?
Right.
I mean, if the kid was given,
it should have been written. At the very least, every single word should have been
a stenographer in the room. Yeah.
Yes, but should have been ultimately recorded. But you don't have enough tapes. Come on.
Yeah.
What
exactly.
do we? It's obviously some sketchy practices going on here. And one thing that was said that someone had talked to one of the investigators early on and said, "How do you, when you get all these tips and calls and you get all these people to interject themselves in the story, and you say you go to follow up on somebody made a call saying this person seems like suspicious. I saw them in the area, whatever. You go to talk to them, and if they give you details that don't line up, that's when you know they weren't a part of it. That's why you quit. Everything that Jesse Misskelley was doing.
Yeah.
He was so off on everything, and they said, well, he had enough stuff that only the person would know. And it's like, how do we know you didn't tell him that before you started the fucking recording?
Exactly.
You were talking to him for 11 hours, and then
Lauren, how do we know he didn't just hear it around town? By this time, all intimate details of the crime were already being spread all over town.
Yeah. And
he could have heard it by word of mouth by anybody.
But
Everybody
even more
was
than
talking
that,
about
10 to 11 hours, and they'd shown him crime scene photos too.
Yeah.
They'd shown him a damn photo, which what they say was they triggered him into, like, it really worked him up, and it upset him. And now he knows some of the details of the crime as well. And not only that, they had done something. This is real dirty what they'd done. So before he gives this confession, they had put him under a lie detector test, right?
Yeah.
Under this guy, and the lie detector professional does this test and asks him if he was there on the day, if he saw anything, blah 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 blah. And the lie detector specialist comes out of the room where he'd given the test to Jesse and says he's lying his ass off to the police. And so they, in their mind, that's what he said. He's lying his ass off. And so that in their mind confirmed this guy was there. He did it. And that's why they felt comfortable pressing him so hard.
And that's such bullshit. Everybody knows lie detector tests you can't use that in court.
You've
never been able to really use that in court.
Here's what's really, really fucked up is later on when the defense got their hands on the actual transcripts from the lie detector test, they sent it to like an FBI, like former FBI professional guy who does this. And he goes, there was nothing. He said he was not deceitful on anything other than one question, and it was pertaining to drugs. Because Jesse had dabbled in drugs and maybe sold some drugs here and there, whatever. He was not deceitful on any of the questions about that day and the children and the crimes.
Right. Yeah.
The fucking guy lied.
Right.
The same thing is supposedly with Damien too. They had given him a lie detector test too. So this guy either he was really bad at his job or he lied.
Who sent off the graph? Who sent off the paper to the FBI?
I don't know.
Okay.
This is part of the book that we read.
It's just strange that
the defense attorneys attained.
The defense attorneys had to have, right?
Later on, they attained these.
I was about to say because the officers didn't even look at it. They were like, "Okay, well, if that's what you say, then that's what you. Then that's
it's
what
all
it is."
confirmation bias. They want to hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, lying his ass off. I'll put that in the report.
Right.
Yeah.
And so of course Jesse hears this guy say he's lying his ass off, and he's going, "What? Like,
yeah."
Do I not remember what I did? Like, I'm sure. Like, he's like, "Well, they already believe I did it. I might as well."
Yeah.
It's just beyond corrupt.
And of course,
dirty.
they're telling them all the shit that they always tell them, like, maybe we can help you out if you just be honest with us. We can help you out. There's I'm sure there's plenty of shit like that. And by help out, he's thinking like, oh, I'm going to get to go home. I'm going to get to get off if I just tell the truth.
Right.
Because you're talking about a boy whose education is no higher than third grade.
Right.
And if you tell a third grader, like, just tell me the truth, everything's going to be all right. Typically, they'll confide in you.
And you got to watch the documentaries if you haven't seen them. You probably have, but if you know what we're talking about, when you see Jesse Miss Kelly, he's done a ton of interviews.
Yeah,
the guy is just not a bright person. I really like him from everything I've seen.
But he seems like a good person.
He seems like a good dude. Like all kids loved him. Like he was really cool to like younger kids. He befriended them and was like nice to them and. From all accounts, people really liked him, and even a person that ended up screwing him, Vicky Hutchinson, which we'll get to, really liked him and looked at him as like a son in a sense.
Yeah,
yeah, and so they basically get what they wanted. The police get their confession quotes, confession from somebody who was supposedly there and played a part in it. And that exact night, they break more rules by doing a impromptu 10 p.m. search of the homes of all three perpetrators in their minds. Damien's home is raided that night at 10 p.m. Jesse's and Jason Baldwin's homes are all raided at 10 p.m. at night, even though there's stipulations that say, that the only time you would do that in the middle of the night is if it was a dangerous situation for the police to, there's some stipulations and none of them met.
No,
this. They could have easily gone in the morning and apprehended
and they found
them.
nothing.
And they found nothing, of course. Yeah.
Found absolutely
other than
nothing.
Some books with some writings that they would end up using later in court to prove how weird Damien is.
It was just little excerpts from poems and songs and stuff that he'd written down. Like, who hasn't done that before? Like, just little things that mean something. As a teenager, you're grasping. You're looking for people to understand you and your weird feelings. So you write this shit down. Like,
so this is 1 month out from the crimes or from the boys being discovered. And you get the interview, the infamous interview with Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell by the media, in which they ask him, they make the big announcement that the perpetrators have been caught.
Yeah.
We've caught the people who have killed these
sure
boys.
Are you, right?
Yeah, and they ask him, on a scale of 1 to 10, how positive are you that you got the right guys? And he says 11.
11.
He's looking all smug.
Definitely.
Yeah, we got ourselves a confession from a guy who can't hardly tell what day it is.
Yeah.
So if that's pretty strong to me.
He don't know the president, but god damn, he was there. I know it.
Right. And so they all three boys are arrested, and on August 4th, the three pleaded not guilty to capital murder at a pretrial hearing. Now we move on to 1994. The jury gets selected, and a trial is set. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. This half the book we read is about all the pre-trial motions and
Yeah.
the jury selection and how that can get tricky. And they ended up deciding that Jesse Miss Kelly would have a separate trial from the other two.
Yeah, because he gave the confession.
He gave the confession, and that would affect the other two.
Absolutely.
Which it did. Anyway, it didn't matter whether you separated. We're talking about Arkansas.
Yep.
You can tell me people aren't going to know that he confessed?
Right. It didn't help at all. They had the trials in different counties or whatever, and none of it mattered.
None of it mattered. You're talking about some severe talking going around in these towns, and the police can't shut their mouths, and everybody knows that Jesse confessed, and it even comes out in the trials for Jason and Damien.
Yeah.
Somebody on the stand comes out and says something about the confession, and they have to have a moment where Judge Burnett makes a proclamation to the jury about you have to disregard what you just heard. It's like, disregard? We just heard that the third guy that was there confessed. Like, how do we just forget that?
Right.
Are you kidding me? This has to be a new trial. Of course, he denies that. Like, he denies everything.
Yeah.
And so I just realized that we forgot about Vicky Hutchison and Aaron Hutchison. So they were also played a big reason in why these three were ended up getting railroaded. So Vicky Hutchison was a woman who lived in the area, and she actually was kind of in some trouble herself. She'd been pointed at as someone who had stole from her current employer. She had just started working for this job, and there was money, $200 that had come up overcharged on something, and she was the new employee, and it had never happened before. Yeah, she was the cashier at the time. And so the police had taken her in and were going to talk to her about it. Right. And she happened to bring her 8-year-old son with her, a kid named Aaron Hutchison, who happened to be friends with Stevie Branch, Christopher Byers, and Michael Moore.
Of course.
The victims happened to be friends with them. And so they're talking to her about this $200 that she potentially stole. And Aaron's running around, and they thought it was very unprofessional that she had brought him to this.
Right.
And Aaron, as kids do, starts talking about how he had seen some things.
Right.
And he was at the woods that day and starts telling these tall tales.
She planned all this shit. She was probably like, just start talking about that.
She seems like the type of person that might do that, because there was also talk that she was expecting a reward for this. And so she could have easily been coaching up her son.
Everybody was after that $35,000.
Right. Granted, this kid you almost feel for, because he did know these three boys, and maybe he's just dealing with some trauma of his friend, hearing that his friends were killed. And,
right.
And then his mom's pressuring him, and it's a whole awkward situation.
And he's probably hearing all kinds of crazy shit at school too, and he's relaying that and little bits of this, and kids are exaggerating.
He said that he had seen Satanists, ritualistic things going on in those woods. He had witnessed dogs being sacrificed.
Like, he even knows what that shit is.
Yeah, he's making up all kinds of stuff. But Vicky takes it upon herself to become a private investigator in a sense, or help the police to nail these.
She trying to get her payday, bro. She just got fired.
She knew.
We didn't mention that yet.
Right. She knew Jesse Miss Kelly pretty well. She'd had him hanging around all the time.
Yeah.
In a sense, was like he was like a second son to her.
Now remember, Jesse's mental level is about the level of an 8-year-old.
Right.
About the level of a third grader. So like he can connect with these kids on a level that, makes them feel more comfortable.
Right.
So that's why he probably hung out with a lot of younger kids.
Yeah. Well, she knew that Jesse hung around Damien, Jason here and there.
Yeah.
And so the police kind of allow her to do her own, infiltrate. She almost becomes like an informant. They have her bug her place and start asking Jesse to invite Damien over. She has Jesse invite Damien to her house and starts trying to get recordings of Damien maybe potentially confessing to her about this crime and whatnot. She's given him alcohol. She's been giving Jesse Miss Kelly alcohol. She's very strange character.
But she had Damien come over under the ruse that she wanted to learn more about the occult, right?
Yeah.
So that's what she was doing. She was like...
So she was doing some character assassination work for the police that would later come out in trial. She would end up taking the stand and talking about Damien in a dark light, and then she would end up helping to get these boys convicted. And then later on, we'll just wrap up Vicky Hutchison because I can't stand her. But she would many years later, after these kids had been locked up, and I think after he'd been let out, she made a statement that she had made it all up. She had made all this up.
Yeah.
So
she was just trying to get some money.
Right.
That's all it was. Because she got fired from her job. In case you guys didn't know, because when her son Aaron started talking about the boys that were killed, obviously the detective was like, okay, well, fuck this freaking $200 gas station thing. Like, you're free to go.
Right.
We need to talk to him. And then But her employer was like, no, you're fired. Right. Didn't help her there.
She actually, after the boys got convicted, later went to the police and started requesting a $35,000 reward for saying that she played a big part in them getting taken down. So and then ended up suing the city as well, I think.
Oh, did she?
Yeah.
Didn't know she sued the city too.
Yeah. So she's a real piece of work.
Yeah. She's desperate at this time.
There's several people that helped the police and jury convict these kids.
Right.
We're just naming a few, but we had to talk about Vicky Hutchison because definitely played a big role in it and would end up taking the stand. And so we'll get to the trial real quick. The presiding judge would be a guy named David Burnett, a guy that we really grew to hate throughout this thing.
It just
allegedly seemed
biased,
very
guys.
One-sided judge. I didn't. You know what? I this whole podcast has been a journey, a learning lesson for me on like criminology and on law and how the court system works and everything like that. And I never really, I guess I was naive to think that the judge didn't do a whole lot, that the jury really decided it, and depending on your defense attorneys and all that stuff. Yeah. I've now realized how important a judge is, man, because he really hampered the defense's ability to defend their clients the entire time. Like every single thing the defense asked for, there are very many reasonable requests. You know, can we bring this witness to the stand to, talk about either the character of this person or this or that? Right. I have some examples that we'll get to, but
is it even possible to have one human make a non-biased decision? I don't think it is.
Yeah, probably not.
I don't think it is. I think that's a flaw in our justice system right there.
Right.
Like I like the jury idea, but I don't like that the jury doesn't have final say. But then again, I don't know if I want someone who has no experience in law or criminal justice having the final say, even if it is 12 people.
Right. So let's get to the first trial on Jesse Miss Kelly. And it was basically all about the confession. The confession was analyzed throughout it. And it basically, the defense tried to point to the fact that he was coerced into it, that there was 12 hours, all these things that make a lot of sense. The fact that he was questioned for 12 hours and only 46 minutes were actually presented in court and recorded.
And he was getting big details wrong, like the fact that they were tied up with rope when they were actually tied up with shoestrings that were different colors. And he said they were black and white shoestrings that were tied up with, and he said brown rope.
He said that one big thing that isn't talked about enough was that he said that Damien started screwing him and stuff, and there was actually no evidence that they were sexually assaulted.
Nope.
Yeah, so, I mean, none of it really made any sense. None of his, I mean, they say, there was details that he knew that only the person that was there could know. No, that's not true at all, because we don't know what you told him leading up to this. We don't know what you showed him leading up to this. We don't know what he heard in the community.
Right.
We don't know any of that. So, yeah, he definitely could have known things that only
Absolutely.
person. Yeah, so everybody knew things that the person was there knew by a couple days out.
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the defense obviously did that, but the whole time Judge Burnett was hampering their ability to properly defend him, in my opinion, and your opinion.
Absolutely.
If you watch the documentary, if you read this book, she talks a lot about all the times that they would have their little circle meeting up by the judge and request this or request that. Yeah. Every single time the prosecution requested something that would help their case, Judge Burnett allowed it. Every single freaking time the defense asked for anything, if they asked for the right to bring a witness to the stand, he would say, that's just going to make this thing draw out longer.
Yeah,
it's not going to
time for that, blah, blah, blah.
And you'll see in Damien's trial, some of the things that he allowed to be on the stand that are just like...
It's almost like he was like, no, there's no time for other possibilities of this murder. We'll just focus on these boys.
Right.
We'll just convict them.
Let's worry about convicting these boys.
Let's just worry about convicting them. We already got a good lead here.
Right.
Let's not bring in other people.
Right. We don't need any slanderous things that say that these boys didn't do it now. You know?
Right.
All right, so in the end, the tape recording of the 46-minute interview with police where Jesse said that he was there while this whole thing went down was enough, and the jury decided to convict him of life plus 40 years, and this was a big blow, obviously, to the other two boys and to Jesse and to Jesse's family, who believe there's no way, just off of this bullshit coerced thing, and no evidence, no physical evidence linking him to anything.
Nope.
Or the other two boys, for that matter, to anything.
Right. So basically, the way it broke down was he got life for Michael Moore because he's the one he chased down, right? Because they're thinking that if he didn't chase him down, then Michael Moore would still be alive.
That was in the final statement by the prosecutor.
Right. And then he got 20 years each for the other two.
Yeah.
Just for being there.
Right. And so, yeah, he's in a state of shock and disbelief. You see videos of him shortly after in Paradise Lost where he's in jail and just,
I still
he's like,
don't
I don't
think
know
it's
if I
hit
can
him.
take it. I don't know if I can be here without my family. And
Yeah.
he adjusted well to the prison life. You see him later in the other ones, and he seemed like he was most cut out for it, to be honest. Like, there's an argument to be made that this might have been for the better for...
Well, because he had somebody telling him what to do.
Yeah, he seemed like a guy that needed structure.
I feel like Jesse would have also thrived in like the military.
Yeah.
Somewhere where someone is telling him what to do, when to eat, when to sleep.
A frontline soldier, he would have been devastating.
Oh, he would have been a badass.
Right? Yeah.
Kelly,
Let's make that clear.
He had a janitor ring of dog tags.
Right. Yeah, dude, he had a badass freaking haircut too. By the way, when he first got picked up, that mullet with the lines.
Yeah, the lines on the side.
Dude, it looked pretty sick.
Yeah. Jason had a pretty crazy mullet too.
Yeah, the looking back at old pictures of them were pretty cool. He seems like the type of kids that I'd kind of want to hang out with.
In the mid-90s.
Right. So that goes down. It's kind of a shock, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the community. They were probably all just happy.
They were celebrating. Yeah.
Right, because, the word that had gotten out there was that these 3 freaking...
Yeah, they got the Satanists off the streets.
Satanist kids that ritualistically killed these babies.
That's right.
Yeah. So he's locked up, and then we're awaiting the next trial. And there's a lot of talk between the lawyers. They start immediately trying to offer a deal to Jesse Misskelley after convicting him,
right?
And like saying all these horrible things about him, how he killed these 3 boys, and he sat through this trial about it.
Right.
The same prosecuting attorneys come up to him and start trying to play nice with him and saying, we can really do something good for you if you're willing to testify against your 2 buddies.
Right.
And if you go on the stand and basically testify to what you told us, we'll lower your sentence.
Yeah, they were planning on dropping the life sentence, and
they were doing some dirty things in that they were saying, like they were meeting with him without his defense attorney, Dan Stidham. They were meeting with Jesse without telling his attorney, which is completely against what you're supposed to do.
Oh, absolutely.
His defense is supposed to know anytime people meet
Jesse
with him.
had no idea that this was wrong.
Right.
He didn't know that this was against
They're
the
meeting
rules.
with him. They're giving him promises like, oh, we'll let you see your girlfriend. Jesse had this girl that he'd been dating.
Right.
And he just wanted to see anybody he knew. He was just in a state of shock and just missing everything.
Yeah.
And just couldn't believe what had happened. And so they're just offering him this and that. And he's really divided on whether he should do this or not and help himself out. But ultimately, in the end, leading up to the trial for the other 2, he decides that he's not going to testify, that he's not going to sit up there and lie and sentence his friends potentially to death or to life in prison.
Right.
If he doesn't have to. So
he kept
did the
life
right
in
thing.
prison.
Yeah, he kept life in prison.
Life in prison to not lie.
That's a man's move right there.
That is.
He pulled a bitch move. He probably still would have gotten screwed either way, whether he would testify
he still gets
or not.
40 years.
Yeah.
And then chances are he's probably not going to get out.
Right.
But you're right. I mean, you can say what you want about
it. Must have been a hard
education,
decision at the time, though, especially for a kid of his.
Yeah, that took balls, man.
Right. And after just being railroaded, and feeling like he got screwed, like what they were telling him, like those 2 were going to walk, like the police and the attorneys were telling him, like those 2, if you don't testify, odds are they're getting off and they could go after your family. They were saying stuff like that to him too.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
No, he's like, no, they'd not
probably
because
love
they
you.
didn't do it.
They would probably freaking come and visit me and put money on my books and everything if they get off because I don't testify against them.
Right, exactly.
And there's a lot of talk between the defense attorneys feel real confident that if he doesn't testify, that there's no way that that Damien and Jason are going to get convicted of this. What do they have?
Way.
If they don't have that, what do they have? They have all circumstantial evidence. They had we have to mention the couple fibers. They found a couple fibers.
God,
they
fibers.
started. I would use the word fabricating evidence. They started creating evidence out of thin air because they knew they had nothing. So one thing they do is they go to the area where Damien and Jason live. They live pretty close to each other, and behind Jason lives in like a trailer, and behind his trailer is a little pond or a lake, I guess.
Yeah.
And they get a scuba diver, and they have the scuba diver search that lake behind
a team of scuba divers.
Check the lake behind Jason Baldwin's trailer.
Right.
And within minutes, they come up with this large buck knife, like a large hunting knife. It's
with one serrated edge.
One serrated edge on it. And they're sold that this is obviously the murder weapon.
That's it.
That people never throw anything in lakes.
Yeah.
This who knows how old this shitty knife was.
Right.
They pull it up like, we got it. It was on the newspaper the next day, the scuba diver holding the knife up. Like, we got the knife.
Here's what's crazy. How'd the reporter know that they were?
Yeah, who took that photo?
Yeah, who took the photo?
Because it was supposed to be under wraps that they were doing that.
That was a huge part of the case that was just swept under the rug. It's like, who took the photo? Who was there?
Right. Could it have been a police officer that took it and then gave it to the news, maybe?
Yeah, maybe, but...
That's what I was wondering when I was reading the book, because she was talking about it. But anyways, they just immediately assume that this is the knife. Mm-hmm. You know, and they bring people onto the stand that obviously say, yeah, this could have been the knife. It's like, yeah, a lot of knives could be the knife.
Yeah, any knife could be the knife.
Right, including the knife that a certain John Mark Byers, during this trial that we're about to talk about, leading up to the trial, the HBO series is being recorded.
Right.
Paradise Lost. Mm-hmm. And John Mark Byers is becoming kind of buddy-buddy with the film crew.
He's kind of buddy-buddy with everybody.
He is kind of buddy-buddy with everybody, the police included. Mm-hmm. That's part of the problem here. But he goes up to one of the film crew members, a cameraman or something, and gives him a Christmas gift. It's around Christmas time.
Little fold knife here.
He gives him a used folding knife that he'd had at his house for a long time that had just supposedly just been sitting on a shelf.
Never been used. Never touched
he just took care of it. You know, all he did was treat it. Take care of it and keep it on a shelf. He never used it.
Squirt a little WD-40 in the hinge every now and then.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little strange that he gives them a knife in the first place, but then they open the knife and they see that there appears to be a small amount of what appears to be blood on the knife, and they're wondering, why would this guy, who we barely know, who's a part of a murder trial where his son was stabbed to death, his stepson was stabbed to death, give us a knife?
Yeah,
and it has blood in it, and so they're conflicted on what to do. HBO's having meetings, going, what are we going to do with this knife this guy gave us that has blood in? We have to do something, right? This could really hurt our documentary. This could seize our documentary. This whole thing could be over.
Right. This whole situation is a mindfuck to me.
Right.
I'm like, did he know there was blood? Did he not know there was blood? Was this a ploy?
That's one hell of a mind game if you killed those kids and then you're doing that.
Right. Is this like something where you want to be like, look how ballsy I am? Kind of like if
that's what it felt like.
If he was in the mindset of a serial killer, like this is a serial killer move right here.
It's the same shit that John Mark Byers does through this whole thing with the teeth that we'll get to.
Yeah, yeah.
He's doing all these things that like almost intentionally make him look guilty, but he's like laughing about it. It's like
he almost wants to see how untouchable he is.
So ultimately, HBO, after having these meetings, they decide they have to do the right thing and turn this over to the police. So they talk to Gary Gitchell. They give him the knife. They say, look, John Mark Byers gave us this knife as a gift. It appears to have some sort of blood on it. So Gary Gitchell has it sent out. The trial's coming up. So he's like, I really don't want to deal with this because it could throw everything off.
Right.
We're going to have to introduce this to the court and say this did occur.
Yeah, they're thinking that this
cast suspicion on someone other than the people that they're trying to convict.
They're thinking this is just a stupid move. They think this is just a stab in the dark here.
Or pathetic attempt by the defense.
Yeah, they think the defense is like, well, there was actually one interview with the prosecution attorney, and he was like, "This is a bold move." He's like, "This is a long shot. This is not going to happen." He's like, bringing in another suspect this late in the trial. He's like, this is suicide.
They didn't just do it for no reason, though.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, they have more evidence than you have ever had.
Right.
they have blood.
They have not only a knife that could have been. It was also testified. An expert said that this knife could also have been used, just as much as the knife that was found in the lake could have been used. So they send it off to get tested, and the small amount of blood that they have, they test and they see that the blood in the knife was human, and that it matches the DNA of John Mark Byers, and it also matches the blood of Christopher Byers.
Dun,
which is strange because John Mark Byers is his stepdad, supposedly. So that's strange in itself. It could also be 6% of the population. So maybe they happen to have
6% of the population of what? The world or Arkansas?
I'm guessing the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying because Arkansas is all white people. But if it's 6% of the world, then it's like a much wider net, I guess.
Then it's more specific, is what I'm saying.
But it is strange in that John Mark Byers, after being questioned by the police about this knife, said that he was actually, there's an interrogation about this knife that they finally sat him down and done what they should have done days after the murder. They should have sat him down and really gave him a thorough questioning about certain things. But because of his background that they had swept under the rug, he had a violent history. They should have really questioned him about this. But now they're finally sitting him down. And
why would they? They know him on a first name basis. Why would they? Not John Mark.
Yeah.
He was singing hymns on Sunday. Couldn't have been him.
Yeah. And so during this police questioning, they asked him about the knife and what did you use it for? And he said, I never used it.
Never used it for nothing.
Never used it for nothing. I just sat it on my shelf.
Yeah.
And so that's the initial thing before they get the results back.
Yeah.
And so when they get the results back, they get the testing, and this is during the trial. They have to talk to him about it. They bring him on the stand, and they read him the defense attorneys for Damien and Jason. They read the questioning that the police had given him about that knife initially, and they say, "You said here that you never use that knife. That
word for word, they have the entire interview.
That there should not be any blood on that. That you never used it. Blah blah blah." And they go, "Well, we found that there's blood on that, and that it matches you and it matches your son." And he says, "Do you know where that blood came from?" "Yeah, I know where it came from. I cut my thumb." And he's looking at me.
Okay.
It's like, did you just remember that? And he's like, well, I think I could have remembered it right after, the next day after they questioned me, I remembered that I was cutting up some venison, and I cut my thumb. And he had told him, initially he told him, "I don't think I've ever nicked anything. I've never used it to cut up any meat."
So he's cutting up venison with that pocket knife?
Yeah, supposedly.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He said that he had a fillet knife.
Yeah.
And that he was using that, and he wanted to see how the pocket knife would do. Yeah. So he tried it, and it didn't work for
Sometimes
shit. So
I just like to make things harder on purpose.
Forget a fillet knife when you're trying to cut up meat. I'm going to use this
Get this little 3-inch serrated blade here. This will do it.
So very, very weird, very questionable. He seemed like his demeanor was completely different on the stand. Like he was nervous. Oh, Granted, you would be, but he wasn't nervous in any other light. Like he was doing live broadcasts, disputing, because later on when the West Memphis, this guy was great on camera. Like you can't overstate it enough how much he just was a natural at it. Like he just came to life when the cameras went on.
He did,
and he was good. I mean, he would outperform people. Like later on when the West Memphis Three group came around and they started doing live things, and it was like there was dispute between him and the West Memphis Three group that thought that these boys were innocent. They did like a live camera shoot. Where it was him versus the head of the West Memphis Three group,
right?
And he fucking smoked the dude. Like he's on live TV. He's like, I'm 6'5", and they can come find me. And the other guy's like all like jumbling over his words and doesn't know what to say. Yeah. He's like, it's not easy to be live on camera like that.
When you've bullshitted your whole life, man.
But
you
yet
become real
on
good at
stand during the trial for Damien and Jason, he seemed
at a loss for words,
super nervous, a loss for like they were about to catch him up in something.
Yep. He was very careful. He wasn't
very telling to me.
He wasn't so quick with his responses like he typically was. He sat there and thought about it for a second, and you kind of get a glimpse in those eyes, and you see that there's they're not very deep. There's something he doesn't want you to see what's in there.
He's hiding things.
Yeah, in that big forehead of his, he's got all kinds of
beluga whale head of his.
He has a tumor. He has a brain tumor. Remember?
Yeah, that's right. And we'll talk about more.
It's probably all in his forehead.
Yeah, John Mark Byers, man.
I don't know.
I do something. So. A couple of highlights from the trial of the other two. One thing is, Jason Baldwin's lawyer wanted nothing to do with Damien, and he wanted to. He
was like, crucify him.
He was upset that their trial was together because Damien, obviously his character was being assassinated the whole time, and Jason being associated with him made him look like he was a part of this cult that they were trying to portray Damien being a part of.
Right.
And one way that the prosecution displayed to the jury that Damien was in fact in a cult and a part of cult
affiliation.
What was the trappings of a cult? He was.
Oh yeah.
He was. Anyways, they brought in this so-called expert named Dale Griffiths, who had a mail order PhD. Literally, no, he really did, because the defense, when the defense questioned him,
this is great.
When they cross-examined him, he was. They were saying, well, what exactly. What courses,
qualifies you?
What qualifies? What courses did you do? And he's going, I already told you. No, seriously. What courses?
No, what classes did you take to get your PhD?
Finally, he goes, none.
None. No classes.
No classes. And so this guy is a so-called expert. Judge Burnett allows it. Obviously, the defense is like, this guy is not an expert. What says he's an expert?
Well, he sure knows a hell of a lot about black fingernails and such. So
yeah, of course, Judge Burnett. I'll allow it.
Yeah,
I'll allow it. I'm interested.
Yeah,
I want to learn more about this cult stuff.
Yeah,
basically is what he was saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
And so Dale Griffiths sits up there and says that people that follow the cult, occultism, they wear black.
Yeah.
They have black fingernails. They typically have black hair. They will read these books. They will have seances. They'll paint their face black. Blah 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 blah. A bunch of fucking bullshit.
Yeah. Candle circles.
Yeah, this is what they're doing to convince this jury that Damien, along with two other kids, killed these 8-year-old boys.
Happened on a full moon.
No real evidence. We skipped over the fibers. They had supposedly found some fibers.
You mentioned it briefly, but
on around the bodies.
It's insignificant.
That had been there supposedly from secondary transfer.
Right.
So it wasn't fibers from Damien or Jason. It was fibers from their houses that these fibers could have come from a number of anything. Anything you buy at Walmart could have had these fibers on them. If you checked any of the police officers or anybody in the jury, anybody in that courtroom's houses, most of them would have had fibers that would have been
to mention
microscopically similar.
This town probably didn't have a whole lot of places to shop.
Yeah.
Okay, let's put it that way. I mean, they probably had a Walmart. That's probably it.
This town had 4 fibers, and 2 of them were at the crime scene.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying.
It's
like this fiber evidence was bullshit. The knife there was nothing. There was no evidence on the knife, no DNA on the knife that proved that it was a part of. It was all hearsay. At the end, so we'll get the knife with the fucking grapefruit drove me insane.
Oh my God!
The grapefruit,
the demonstration, by the prosecution.
Yeah, the prosecution. John Fogelman was the lead prosecutor.
Right.
He was annoying, smug, but I guess a lot of prosecutors are. Whatever side you're on, the other attorneys are going to seem really annoying to you.
Of course.
So Fogelman maybe wasn't so bad, but he annoyed the shit out of
perception.
But he used a grapefruit in his final statement to the jury, and he took the large knife and he like hit the grapefruit with the knife and showed that. Obviously, this is the knife that killed those boys because look at the indentions on the grapefruit. And then he took the pocket knife from John Mark Byers and smacked the grapefruit. And he's like, see how it's a straight line? I rest my case.
We're like, no, we can't see that shit at all. We couldn't see. No, it was bullshit.
And Judge Burnett allowed him to stand up there and hit us grapefruit with a fucking knife.
Like a hammer in that way. Not even in a way that a knife is used.
Right.
He was just like, dunk, dunk. He was just like slapping the blade against the grapefruit. Just look at this.
Unbelievable, man. Another highlight from the trial with Jason and Damien was a kid named Michael Carson, who was 16 years old.
Right. He was being held with Jason.
A vast criminal history. He was someone who was known to break into homes, rob homes. He had a drug history. He was very sketchy character.
Right.
And he, in August of '93, was incarcerated at the Craighead County Detention Center in Jonesboro, Arkansas. He was at the detention center facility facing a burglary charge, and also incarcerated at the same time was Jason Baldwin. During the 5 days Carson was there, he claims that he befriended Baldwin, and Baldwin had confessed to him that he had murdered the 3 boys.
He talked to Baldwin all of 2 times.
And he said his statement, and granted, he didn't come to the police with this information until months after
later.
Baldwin had supposedly told him this stuff.
Yeah.
And he said that he had saw the news and he saw the parents and how distraught they were, and he'd felt bad, so he had to come out and say
his little Robin heart.
Right. He had to come out and say something. And so basically he was interviewed by the police on February 1st, 1994, days before Baldwin and Eccles went on trial. And they would actually bring this criminal who had something to gain from testifying against Jason up on the stand and question him about what Jason had told him in jail. And supposedly within 24 hours of Jason meeting him, he had said that, yeah, I chopped up those boys. I mutilated them.
Yeah. Just went on and bragging.
Went on about it. And so what came of this, what came to light later was that his parole officer, somebody connected to this kid who was, in the system, connected to this kid, had leaked information to this kid, this 16-year-old, about this crime that had happened. And he took that information that he'd learned from someone and used it.
And then the police claimed that the person that told him could not have known. They could have never known.
Yeah, well, either way, he stood up on there and lied about what Jason had supposedly told him. And keep in mind, Jason never told anybody anything. He kept his mouth shut from start to finish of this thing, and always...
Jason barely talked when spoken to.
Oh, yeah. In court, he never made any move. He just sat straight forward, didn't testify. Yeah. That being said, Damien was the only one that took to stand to defend himself and actually was subjected to questioning and I thought did a great job up there.
I thought he did, but Jason's attorney thought that he crucified himself up there.
I thought that Damien made some of the prosecuting experts look kind of silly, like when they would question him about the occult stuff. He talked about the true meaning of Wicca and how it's how it's about a mother being God or whatever, because men can't give birth and all this stuff. He did a good job up there of saying that, I am weird. I read weird stuff, but that doesn't mean I did anything.
Right.
And anyway, so that really hurt Jason, in my opinion. This kid getting up there and saying that because of the stupidity of the jury. They're just going to believe whatever they want to believe.
Yeah.
But I mean, this kid had something to gain. And the information didn't match up. All 3 boys weren't mutilated. So how does that even make any sense?
Right.
And Jason never said anything to anyone else. And within 24 hours of meeting this criminal and being in jail with him, he's going to tell him?
Not a chance.
Yeah, so I mean, and he waited months to tell the police this. It just so many things just didn't add up.
Oh, real quick, while we're talking about witnesses that were called, there were also a few young girls that were at a softball game that had supposedly
had never met Damien
in their life, but supposedly overheard Damien saying
bragging
that he did it, about killing him. But here's the thing: like when
you can almost even picture Damien bragging to like some people about doing it, even if he didn't. You know what I mean?
He was probably like, if I was doing
joking
it,
about it.
Like, da, da, da.
He had I'm sure he had a dark sense of humor. He probably would joke about doing that.
Right. But here's what's funny is when the girls were questioned about it, they didn't know. Like one of the defense attorneys were like, "Well, what was Damien talking about before that?" They're like, "We don't know." Well, who's he talking to? We don't know.
Right.
What did he say after that? We don't know.
I think the mindset in the town at the time was that everybody had made up their mind that these kids would do it, had done it, and let's help out getting them convicted in any way we can.
Because you feel like a hero. You
for
feel
the
like
greater good.
Hero.
I think they looked at it from the greater good standpoint. Let's get these kids off the street because they did it, even if we have to lie in the process of doing it. I think that was Vicky.
Exactly.
I think that was Vicky Hutchinson's outlook. I think that was these girls.
I think Vicky Hutchinson wanted the money.
Also wanted the money.
I think she wanted the money more than anything.
Yeah, but I mean, I think people were like, I don't care how we have to do it. Let's get these kids behind bars because they're fucking weird and they killed these boys, these babies.
If they didn't, then they're going to do something weird.
Right.
Or they're going to do something ungodly.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I think that was
it was a pack mentality.
There were so many so-called witnesses that came forward and said that we overheard Damien bragging about doing it. Mm-hmm. But really, like, there's no proof that no one else said that was there at the time, or they didn't know Damien, or they didn't, like you said, didn't know the people he was with. They couldn't really say what he was talking about before or after that. It was just we heard him bragging about it.
Yeah,
that's the kind of witnesses the prosecution was bringing to the stand.
He said he killed them kids.
Right.
Okay.
That's good enough for me.
All right, well.
Lock him up. No physical, real, true evidence.
Nothing.
Some knife they found in a lake, some fibers that could be pretty much found in anyone's home, and a few jackholes that came forward and said that they heard him either bragging about it or telling them stories, and then a confession. And you know that ultimately the jury for Damien and Jason, they knew damn well about Jesse Miss Kelly's confession. There was said to be a jury member that rose to the highest ranks of jury members, the like lead jury guy, the person that kind of commands the room. That person had known about Jesse's confession before even, but the questioning for the jury members was so weak that he had already had his mind made up that they had done it, and he basically was able to evade the questioning and make sure that he was on the jury so that he could persuade the rest of the jury members to convict these boys, and he did his best part whenever they had their jury meetings to convince everyone else. Wow. There was something about a paper where they had pros and cons, or like basically things that made them think that Damien was guilty, and things that made them think Damien may not be guilty.
Right.
And one of them was scratched out when they gave the final copies over to the court. And when they discovered the original copy had been written, Jesse's confession was on there. So the jury members saw that on the side of him being convicted.
Yeah. And they couldn't count that.
Completely unfair trials, very much Salem witch trials. If you can't tell which way this is going, Jason was found guilty, sentenced to life in prison, and Damien Eccles was given capital punishment. He was given the death penalty by lethal injection, and the families were just distraught. Damien actually, his child had just been born. Leading up to during the trial, his girlfriend was pregnant and had the baby.
That was such a weird scene, like where he's sitting in the courtroom, like holding his son in front of the people who think that he killed their son. Mm-hmm. Could you imagine what's going through their minds?
Right, and you can't blame the families for being mad. And
you can't downplay that.
They're led to believe that the police have done their due diligence and that they've got the right guys. I mean, you got to believe the police did their job right, but they didn't. And
guys, the documentaries are worth watching just to listen to the parents.
Oh yeah,
honestly, just to hear these parents, the things that they say, and then some of them who you can tell weren't really affected by their child's death. They were just looking. It's like was it Michael Moore's mom? She was
Dana
the one
Moore?
that was, when she was first on camera, I swear she was like drunk or high or something. And then she had like his Cub Scout.
Oh, no, you're talking about Pamela Hobbs.
Okay, that was Pamela Hobbs, yeah. She had like his Boy
honestly,
Scout thing, and she was like putting it on her head.
Well,
and, like,
you don't, people have really criticized that, but you really don't know what's going on. I think Pamela Hobbs was completely, if you saw the initial video when the police came over and told her what they had found, that her son was dead, she literally fainted. Like when they had just discovered the bodies, they walked out and told her, and she collapsed. And so I think she was going through probably a wave of emotions and probably had like, you know, a whirlwind going on by the time they interviewed her for that. Yeah. What you were talking about, that was kind of weird seeing her like laughing, like, I'm going to be on TV. Yeah. You know, but I still feel like she was everything else I've heard about her is that she was a good mom.
No, you're right. Because once they started talking about him, once they started talking about her son, Steve, her
true
total
feelings.
Countenance changed. Yeah. It was like a switch, and she was just like, whoa. Right. Okay.
And honestly, she probably was I think a large amount of this community was pilled up on all kinds of stuff. You hear about all the different stuff that Mark Byers was on. Oh, yeah. All the different medications he was on. You heard that, was it by the Byers kid, Chris Byers? He was on Ritalin, and he didn't have his Ritalin the day that he was murdered.
Yeah, let's not overlook his mom, Melissa Byers, either.
Oh, she was drugged out. Ooh. She was drugged out big time.
She said some crazy shit.
And she ended up dying of mysterious circumstances 3 years after the kids were killed. And, you know, Mark Byers has his own version of what happened there, and she had a lot of different pills, and a couple of them she wasn't prescribed to. But I honestly think she overdosed.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wouldn't put it past her. I really don't think she would be able to
I think she
handle it.
mixed the wrong things together. She was on all kinds of different meds, probably just still in disbelief from what had happened.
Absolutely.
And I think she had a tendency to be a drug user to begin with, and then her son dying probably didn't help things. Yeah, and her abusive weirdo husband didn't help things either.
Well, losing your son, man, you're never gonna get over that.
Yeah, I mean, you saw their anger, and they believe these kids. For the most part, all the parents believe that they had caught the right offenders. At least Byers, John Mark Byers. We cannot talk enough about him. Later, would change his tune, but. But at first, he was ecstatic about the fact that they had been found guilty, and he was taunting them as much as he could throughout the trial. He was taunting Damien and getting a rise out of Damien, and Damien would actually give some love to the media by like flipping off the families, or like throwing little comments their way,
or smirking at them, which did not look good.
Taunting them, that didn't look good. But at the same time, Damien's like, dude, this is
silly,
insane. I didn't kill these kids, and everyone is like spitting at me, cursing at me, and.
But there was a small part of Damien that made me feel like he enjoyed it. Like, like for instance, when I think they were at a press conference and there was a bunch of guys standing around that had guns and stuff, and he was like, "Wow, they think I'm this dangerous." Right. And then his attorney was like, "No, they're protecting you from them." Right. He was like, "Oh."
Well, in the first Paradise Lost, in a one-on-one interview between HBO and him, he was talking about how, someday I think I'm going to be like a fairy tale here, like a horror story. I'm going to be like the boogeyman. Kids will talk about Damien and how Damien's going to come and get you. And it almost seemed like he was getting off on that idea that he was going to be remembered forever. And it really did not look good to the public.
No, it did not.
And he even talked about in the second one how like he probably shouldn't have said that. But at the time he didn't realize how serious things were. And
these
were kids, man. We can't forget that.
That's one of those times where you're like, maybe.
We can't forget that 3 innocent 8-year-old boys were killed, and we can't. And also at the same time, these 3 that were convicted. You can believe what you want, but I mean, they were still. If you believe they're innocent, you can see why they were acting the way they were acting. It makes sense. Yeah. Because they were kids and they weren't taking it seriously enough, and that ultimately, like what Jesse would later say, is like, I didn't believe that without any evidence that they could actually convict me, no matter what I said. Yeah. Like, they didn't have anything. Right. We didn't do it. Like, we weren't there. There was no blood. There was no nothing.
And that's proved to me, like, that Jesse just wanted to go home. Right. He just wanted to go home. Yeah. He just wanted to be out of that police station. And he would literally said whatever he had to get out. And he didn't know. He wasn't even under arrest at that time. He could have left.
Yeah. He didn't know that.
He could have got up and walked out if he wanted to. Yeah. Nothing they could have done. But
he could have said, I'm not going to say a word until I get a lawyer. And there's nothing they could have done about that either.
Nope. But he didn't know.
But they were authority figures. He was a 16-year-old kid with a 72 IQ, and they knew it. And he wasn't. He was under the impression that there was nothing he could do.
Yeah, he just straight up railroaded him.
Yeah. So Damien sentenced to death. Jason
sentenced to
life. And the documentary would come out 2 years later in '96, I believe, November of '96. The first documentary. Paradise Lost would come out on HBO, and it would spark this huge movement of people believing in their innocence all over the world, all over the country and all over the world. People would come together. There was a website that was formed. Celebrities started getting on board.
There's 2 websites that are formed now.
I'm sure there's more than that,
There's
man.
but there's two that completely contradict each other. You got CNN and Fox News for the West Memphis Three.
What's those?
You got westmemphis3.com and you got westmemphis3facts.com.
Well, wasn't one of them org? The original one was .org.
Oh, is it .org? Okay.
But anyways, yeah, I mean, people start getting together for meetings and they start going to the different motions, and there's obviously a lot of appeals that continue to happen. At first, the attorneys are not going to give up, but of course, all the appeals come back to Judge Burnett, and Judge Burnett wanted this result all along, and he denies, and years are passing by. The movement has grown strong. We've got people, the likes of Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. We've got Johnny Depp, who's crusading for them. They're putting money towards their defense. Who are some of the other notable celebrities?
Sure.
The Dixie Chicks made comments about Terry Hobbs. There's a lot of stuff that starts coming. The fingers start getting pointed.
Oh yeah, they were being real
in other
political
directions.
at that time.
Initially, it was John Mark Byers, and the first Paradise Lost and the second Paradise Lost really pointed at John Mark Byers as potentially the person who actually did it.
Yeah, I wonder if he realized that during the filming that he was putting all this evidence against himself.
Potentially, but they were all getting paid. Everybody was getting paid, and that was also another big reason why the defense of these boys thought that some new lawyers came about, and they thought, well, they weren't given a fair defense because their defense attorneys were getting paid by HBO.
Yeah,
and this and that. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the HBO documentary and how maybe they didn't get a proper defense because there was all this documentation going on. There's people in the courtrooms,
right?
Yada yada yada. But ultimately, without that HBO documentary, without all of them,
this case dies.
And like Damien continues to say to this day, when he's interviewed, he's like, "This is not strange. This happens. This has always happened. This happens all over the place. The only difference is ours was documented.
That's
the
right.
trial was documented. We were interviewed, and that's why I'm free today." So basically, I mean,
so scary.
Yeah. So
that's like one of my biggest fears. It's like getting convicted of a crime you didn't do,
right?
And then there's just this overwhelming
coincidental
evidence.
I think if you put a microscope on just about anybody, you can make them look guilty of almost anything. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
If you really analyze everything, like we do stuff we don't even realize would make us look guilty on a daily basis, like the stuff we Google for the show, the stuff.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. Our search history alone.
Right.
Yeah, that could really mess us up.
The director of the Lord of the Rings came out in their defense. There was the band the Super Suckers, and keep in mind the West Memphis Three knew nothing about any of these bands or anything because they'd been locked up for a while as this movement's growing and a lot of money's being thrown, and some big time lawyers start agreeing to defend them. If they could ever get an appeal, they want a retrial because obviously this trial they felt was unfair, and some big name lawyers come in and they offer to help their cause for free without actually even being paid.
That's crazy.
But ultimately what it took was Judge Burnett finally leaving his post as the judge in that county, and a new judge coming in, Judge Laser coming in, looking at it, set a date for a new trial to be about. And this is so many years later, man. We're jumping ahead because this case is just completely exhausting to us. We realize we're going to miss stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a whirlwind of a case. It's something that should be done in several parts, but we're trying to cram it into one.
These are the highlights.
This is the highlight episode.
Watch the documentaries if you have, half a day.
This is an open conversation about the West Memphis Three. That's what's going on.
Absolutely.
Here. Yeah. So after their appeals had been denied by Judge Burnett, we're talking 99. He denies the appeal. I mean, there's appeals going on for decades. Meanwhile, they're in prison. There's two more documentaries that were made.
He's denying their requests all the way up to 2010. Let's just fast forward that.
Right.
He just keeps denying it.
Meanwhile, Damien Eccles is on death row, being threatened. His life is at stake here.
He's getting no health care.
Getting no health care. His teeth are falling out. He's
losing his vision
because they're planning on killing him. So why are they going to properly take care of him? He spent 10 years. I think approximately 10 years in isolation. I mean, when they finally get out, which we're leading up to, I mean, this dude can barely walk because he's been used to walking in shackles for the last 20 years. God. He's not used to like daylight. Like he almost wants to collapse when he goes outside. That's how bad it was. He didn't know about the internet. I mean, except for people have written letters about all the advances and like in the movement, like how people are all on their side.
Imagine taking a break from the world between 96 and 2011.
Right.
That's huge.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah. So go ahead and wrap it up for us, Mike. What happens?
So finally, in 2011,
New judge is in place.
New judge is in place, David Laser,
Yep.
as you explained earlier, and he schedules a hearing for October 1st. And
Where a new trial date will be set, right?
Right. And then they ended up using a plea arrangement known as the Alford plea.
So out of nowhere, pretty much.
Yeah.
I think the judge lined it up, right? Lined up a deal. He realized that most likely if this went to trial, they were going to be found innocent this time.
Yeah.
And rather than do a long, lengthy, expensive trial, that I'm sure he recognized so much support that they've had for their innocence and so much information that's out there.
Right.
They go to the three boys and they offer they're men at this point. What am I talking about?
Yeah, they're men.
And offer them what we've talked about in the past, something called an Alford plea, which it's very complicated.
It is. It's such a weird plea,
it's a
right?
silly thing.
It's kind of a don't ask, don't tell type plea. It's just like we just take it for what it is, and we all carry on.
So
everyone's happy.
It's their way of admitting that the state had enough against them to find them guilty, which drove them nuts. Now, Jason, these kids had morals. Like Jason, more than anything, what mattered to him was that he wanted the public opinion of him to know that he didn't do this. He wanted to be known as innocent because he knows he didn't do it.
Right.
He would have stayed in prison. He would have stayed and ultimately he wanted another trial where he was found innocent in the end. He wanted to go through the whole trial. The only reason he agreed to this Alford plea was because of Damian Eccles, the fact that he was on death row and he may not live to see another trial completed. Exactly. And in the end, they lost the first trial.
Yeah.
And who knows? They just, do you really want to risk that again?
Right. Let's just take this plea and get out at least.
Yeah. So the Alford plea, basically by them saying, okay, we admit that the state had enough to find us guilty, but we also say that we're innocent, allowed them to walk out that day. And no parole, no nothing. They were free. Free men. Probably
it's almost like saying, we realize the state made a mistake, but we're not going to retaliate. We're not going to sue.
That was another
cool
thing.
With this.
They were basically giving up their ability to sue the city.
Yeah.
And the police station, all that, and whoever found them guilty.
Like, that's all kind of wrapped up in that Alford plea.
Yeah.
That's where it gets complicated. But, yeah.
Yeah. And so they got out, and obviously they started doing a lot of interviews, and they talked to the Paradise Lost HBO documentary series.
It's cool to see the guys, like,
it was
later.
super cool. Yeah, see them sit in a room together. And it's just like...
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, they missed a huge part of their lives, man. They went away for a long time.
Yeah, and Damien's done a ton of interviews, and he's written books. I would be interested to read a Damian Eccles book if we ever have time.
Yeah.
But we're probably going to move on to the next case,
yeah. Well, we're taking a week off next week.
Yeah, that's true.
But after
that. But I think I'm done with this case for a while.
Yeah, I'm done. I don't want to hear these names ever again.
Yeah, so they get out. But, I mean, we can't skip over all the Terry Hobbs accusations that kind of came about later on.
Mm-hmm.
There's...
Terry Hobbs, which is Stephen Branch's stepdad, by the way.
John Mark Byers, he kind of died down on the whole idea of him committing these murders. He turned to the side of the West Memphis Three, free the West Memphis Three, and had the stickers on his truck in the last documentary.
Yeah.
And he was all about these boys are innocent.
What a character change.
These boys are innocent. And they start pointing the finger at Terry Hobbs. There was a hair that was found in the shoelaces, apparently, that was linked potentially to Terry Hobbs. Now, the boys played it at the Hobbs residence all the time.
Right.
And it was... I mean, when you're talking about...
What are you going to do with that? You can't...
What are you going to do with that? He has a very violent past where Pamela had been seen kissing a Mexican guy, and Terry Hobbs lost his mind and shot the guy, I believe, in the stomach.
Shit.
And the guy almost died initially, and then ended up later on dying of complications of surgery trying to fix the shooting wound. That there's a lot on him.
Yeah.
If you look into Terry Hobbs. And I think the biggest problem was that he wasn't talking for so long. He went dark, like he moved away and went dark. So of course the suspicions are going to keep going and going.
He
if you're
didn't
not
say
there
much in the documentaries. I mean, he was kind of just sitting on the couch.
He was one of he was one of the few people that didn't agree to the payments to actually be a part of it. So that's why you pretty much only saw him like in court and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you saw him a few times in the house, in the Hobbs house, where Pamela was talking, or there was a few times where he said, it's hard to see my wife like this, to see her lose her son or whatever.
Right.
But he was never really like tore up about it. But it was his stepson. And we've talked about how it's harder for a man to create a relationship with a child that's not his than it is a woman, I believe.
There was talk about how after his wife had been seen kissing the Mexican guy, obviously a racist guy. He kept bringing up the guy who was Mexican. It seemed like he was way more mad about that.
Yeah.
But anyways, he said that he wasn't going to get even. He was going to get revenge. And this was leading up to the boys being murdered. He had threatened revenge upon her. And so there was that. And then his movements on the night that the boys went missing were suspect. Some people said that he had been seen with the boys that night. And then he claims that he never saw him that day. He says that he got home from work and they were already out on their bikes and that he never saw him that day. There's talk that he went looking for them with his good buddy and left his daughter with that guy's wife. And he went searching for the boys. But then there's also talk that he was just playing guitar with his buddy. And that he was coming and going from his buddy's house that night, showing up, playing some guitar, and then leaving, and left his daughter because he had a 4-year-old daughter, and he would leave the daughter with the buddy's wife to be watched. And so there's a lot of speculation about his whereabouts that night. Right. A lot of speculation about how violent he was a shitty person, really. Yeah. When you look into his past, and same thing with Mark Byers, man. Yeah. I'm not letting Mark off the hook just because he came around to the whole idea that these boys were innocent and he's like a crusader for them now. Fuck that.
He probably knew that shit all along.
There's more evidence that points to him than any of those 3 boys. Not to say that there's enough to convict Mark Byers. Obviously there's not. Right. But there was more than there was for the West Memphis Three that were convicted. Yeah. And his mentality, he's just all over the place. Yeah. I just don't trust the guy. I don't like the guy. He ended up doing a lie detector test in the second documentary from HBO, and he was found to be truthful, but he was on all kinds of different medications at the time, and I don't trust the damn lie detector test anyway. And he's high fiving the expert afterwards, like, yeah, I knew I was innocent.
Hell yeah.
How would you react? Like if somebody said you killed your daughter and you did a lie detector, be like, of course I didn't fucking
Lead me down to Smokies.
Would you get excited that you passed it? You'd be like, oh, duh, I fucking passed it.
Right, yeah. You're not acting like you just won the damn state championship.
Right. I knew I could pass that thing even though I was lying.
Hot damn.
That's what it fucking felt like.
Appreciate you working with me after hours, Daryl.
Yeah, the bite thing too. So yeah. So after they'd been convicted, and the West Memphis Three group came about, they hired a professional pathologist or whatever.
Yeah, he worked on Ted Bundy's case.
Yeah, so this guy knew his shit. They brought him in, and he started meeting with Dan Stidham, who was Jesse's attorney. Right. Because Dan Stidham was the only attorney that stuck around through all of this. He made a promise to Jesse's dad that I'm going to see this through until they are free. Right. And he continued to work even though the defense never didn't get paid until 10 years later or some shit. They were coming out of pocket the whole time, all this stuff. But Dan Stidham was so believed in their innocence that he stuck through. And so he became part of the movement of the West Memphis Three, started working with people that became obsessed with this case. Right. They got connected to this professional medical examiner and he looked at all the crime scene photos. He obtained all the crime scene photos, and he found that the so-called buckle mark on the eye of Michael Moore was actually a bite mark. And they wanted to start, open up the idea of getting bite impressions from people involved in the case. But let's prove that these 3 that are locked up didn't have anything to do with it. Let's get bite impressions. So they did that. Bites didn't match what was on the. That's kind of conclusive evidence that these kids or that they didn't do it. And then they started talking to Mark Byers about potentially getting his teeth impressions, and there's all these. He starts coming up with all these wild reasons why his teeth had gotten either removed or knocked out. First, he's saying he got into a fight about his innocence with somebody, and the guy had knocked all his teeth out, so now he has dentures. And then he started saying that he was taking medication for this brain tumor, and that's why his teeth fell out, and he had to get dentures.
He had them damn teeth pulled.
It seems as though he had them pulled, and then they were like, "Well,
convenient."
And he was like, I'll give you a consent form to the dentist that took my X-rays." And they're like, "Okay, well then let's do that." And he's like, "I don't need to prove nothing to you." It's like, wait, what? Wait. So we called you on that, and now you don't want to? Huh?
Now you don't want to do it. Yeah.
Right. It's just so many weird things. The knife, the teeth, and just his character overall, his sketchy character. Yeah. His
the fact that he was angry at Christopher that night.
The fact that he had admitted to punishing him that day, and then told him to go clean the driveway and left. I think it's possible he came back and found that Christopher had not cleaned the driveway like he said, and he was gone with his friends. Went out, found him, lost his mind, beat Christopher into oblivion, and then the other boys were there witnessing it, and he had to do something.
So he just tied him up.
Christopher was the only one that was mutilated. Yeah, that to me, says something a little bit. Why just him? I don't know, man. if I had to point a finger in any direction, obviously it doesn't mean anything, and it's all speculation, and this is all our opinions, so nobody, get upset. But
right,
I think John Mark Byers, if I had to choose anyone in this story, it'd be him over Terry Hobbs, even though I think Terry Hobbs is a real piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't really count anybody out though. But I mean,
I feel like Terry Hobbs is too self-centered to give a shit about these boys. I feel like he's living his own life.
Yeah.
Coming home, taking it out on his wife. Like, I don't feel like he's messing with these kids.
Let's not forget that there was also, we didn't mention that one scrap of evidence that was found is one of the boys were wrapped in sheets or whatever. There was a hair that was an African American hair that had been found. So there was a hair that was at the crime scene, it's like, these, I didn't gather that these kids knew any black people or were like, consistently hanging out with them. There was no black family members that we knew of. So that's kind of strange. And then you connect the chicken restaurant as well.
Right.
And the guy bleeding and that.
The
Bojangles restaurant.
Yeah, I know, right? That is.
And so there's always the prospect that it could have been just a stranger truck driver that rolled through. There's always that. But I think the motive, I think if it was a stranger, it would have been sexually motivated. I can't. It seemed to me to be a, what do they call that?
Passion.
A rage kill. This
kill.
seemed to be like someone lost their temper and went overboard, and then they went so far that they couldn't turn back, and that potentially beat one of them so bad. But then there's the tying up aspect. If they would have just beat whoever it was, freaked out and got angry, why tie him up? Why not just beat them all to death?
And the fact that they didn't leave any real hard evidence says that it was, well, I guess he could have cleaned it up after the fact.
Right. It definitely seems as though it was done elsewhere, and this was more of a dump site to me.
Mm-hmm.
You would have found some blood on that embankment.
I was about to say, well, the fact that there's no blood means that it was done somewhere else.
Right. Seems to be more than one person.
It does.
It's just such an interesting. You rack your brain all day wondering who the hell did this.
I know.
What the hell happened that night?
I know.
That's why this case still has legs after all these years, and you still see people talking about it. And
that's why this case drives me crazy. I hate doing open-ended cases.
Right. Yeah,
that's why we're not doing this anymore.
That's why we've done so few, if any. Have we ever done an unsolved case like this?
Not really.
Oh, we did the FBI guy that killed his family, but he just never got found, but we know he did it.
Right. Yeah.
We don't know who the hell did this one, man.
Right.
But I think it is interesting because later on, Damien would jump on the Terry Hobbs train and say that he knows Terry Hobbs did it. It's like, dude, you're doing the same thing you got convicted for. You know, like we really don't have any real proof other than the hair, but the hair could have gotten there from any of their home. Like if a Damien Eccles' hair was found on those boys in the rope tying them, okay, that makes You're fucking. How the hell did that get there? Yeah. But Terry Hobbs, this is one of his kids. They're obviously at his house all the time. So his defense is like, of course a hair could be there. They were,
exactly
at my house that day. Like.
What about Terry Hobbs' teeth? Were they ever? They weren't checked out, were they?
I don't know. I can't speak to that for sure. But he finally came out and talked many years later. I want to say 2013. He came out and broke his silence and talked about it. Damn, he looks old too. But
did not age well.
Right. He probably. You know what? I think they said in the documentaries that something happened to his teeth too. Suspiciously. Of course. Maybe it was Hobbs and Byers. Maybe it was Hobbs and Byers. Who knows?
May have had dentures anyways.
Who knows? But definitely comment your thoughts on this case if you'd like. I mean, everybody has their opinions, and I'm like, feel free to tell us what we missed. We have a ton of stuff. We probably have stuff written down in front of us that we missed, but we only have so much time in life.
We only have in life.
And Michael drove across town, and his daughter's here and stuff. We just can't be here all day doing this.
And we want to be done with this case.
We loved it. I said, we loved it, but we want to be done with it.
I love it and hate it.
Right.
Yeah. This case.
Tragedy that it's never been solved, and it's a real tragedy that the wrong people got convicted and put away, potentially.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, like we said, we're still not completely writing off the fact that Damien and the boys could have potentially. You never know. I mean, look at Shonda Shearer. Those girls that were around the same, they were teenagers, did some heinous acts to another young girl.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen cases like this happen before where kids do stuff like this, and then there is a ritualistic thing to it where there's a Satanism or.
Yeah.
We've seen it. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Damien did it. Maybe it was a bad day, and
like we said earlier, like he had a lot of mental
He had
issues.
some dark sides.
He could have blacked out and done it. Like he could have snapped.
There's still a lot of people that believe that they did get the right guys originally.
So in 2013, have you seen this book, Untying the Knot?
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Okay.
I haven't read it.
It's called John Mark Byers and the West Memphis Three.
There's a lot of books. There's a lot of documentaries.
It's by Greg Day.
Yeah. I mean, we read Devil's Knot, and it was very extensive and great book, and it's highly rated for a reason. I mean, the writer, Mara Leverett, did a great job. So
it is a great book.
And we watched all the documentaries, so.
Yeah.
What more do you want from us, guys?
This
is 1 week of preparation. That's like we said. Tell us what you want, and maybe we'll follow up on this someday. Who knows? If anything else comes to light, we'll talk more about it, and we'll discuss it. If you guys email us about this case, we'll read into it.
Maybe we'll read Untying the Knot and see.
Yeah.
What's going on with that?
Maybe we'll do a part 2.
Yeah.
Even though this was supposed to be a whole.
Just see what that's about.
Yeah. So we hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, that was West Memphis 3. Back in early 2018, we recorded that one. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to get to our sponsor this week, as always, Oh My Gaia. Oh My Gaia is an innovative, all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while maintaining effectiveness. At Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural paraben and aluminum-free organic ingredients. Here's a few scents. Unscented, vanilla, cherry almond, sandalwood, lavender, lemongrass, Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle. We have our own scent called True Crime Pine, which is amazing. It will get you out of a bind as well. It covers your tracks in murder. It's a known fact. There's also some new scents that she has coming out called Sailor, Oh Baby, Fireside, which is kind of on and off. Sometimes it's available, sometimes it's not. It's one of my absolute favorites. Fireside smells incredible. She's also officially adding bergamot amber and sweet pea and patchouli. And some exciting news as well in regards to Oh My Gaia. She's now getting into the incense industry. She's going to be putting out incense so your house can smell epic as well. She's going to start out as far as incense with True Crime Pine. And also exciting, she's letting us give away some Oh My Gaia to a lucky listener right now. This person's going to get some True Crime Pine deodorant as well as True Crime Pine incense to try out. And I went ahead and picked someone who reached out to us this week in a tweet and has our stickers and put them on her vehicle. Mary Reisner at Cloud9_72 on Twitter tweeted us a picture of our True Crime Guys Galaxy sticker on her ride. I believe it's a Scion she drives. She said, showing some love for my favorite true crime podcasters. Thanks for the stickers, guys. Keep creeping. Mary Reisner, congratulations. You just won some Oh My Gaias because you reached out and tweeted to us a picture of that sticker on your car. It looks awesome. And so hit us up, messages on Twitter, and I'll send you an Oh My Gaia care package, some True Crime Pine, incense, and deodorant. So thank you. And as always, with Oh My Gaia, if you use the code word CREEPER, CREEPER, it saves you 10% at checkout, whatever you buy on Oh My Gaia. So definitely go get your deodorant. Don't get cancer in your pits. Don't be using that aluminum in your pits, guys. So thank you, Oh My Gaia. Now, all of you guys who take the time to go and write iTunes reviews, click 5 stars on iTunes, I want to thank you guys. And I'm going to give you guys shout outs since the last episode that we put out. We have Dounce 1997, Rangi Fulla. I want to thank you. Erica Zapeta says one of the best true crime podcasts around. We got the fire emojis rolling in. Marina Lovey, fire emojis. Dimps 1127, fire emojis. Kimberly from Texas, fire emojis. But please stop with the fake accents. Never going to happen, Kimberly. Just deal with it. Hail Satin. 5 star. That one almost got me. 5 stars. One of the best true crime podcasts. Patrick Cemental. 5 stars and a bunch of fire emojis. Love it. Zanny Win said Bundy. 5 stars. The best Ted Bundy story I've ever heard. Wow, thanks. I really loved the Bundy episode, I guess. Love Sweet Sam's 5 star. Thank you. True Story Mama. Bunch of fire emojis. Oh my god. Heather Neese, Stina Bean 910, Inara Joe. Bill Ver said fried nut, 5 stars. Love this show. Not to be weird or anything, but if I played for the other team, I'd bang you boys like a cat in a pantry. I love it. Thanks, Bill Ver. Lover Avenged, 5 stars. Beezus 555, thank you. PP Poo Poo Baby Dippy, thank you for the 5-star review. Vector Spot, S Latham, and Thaliana, thank you for the 5-star review. Thank all of you guys for taking the time to go do that. It helps the show a lot. That about does it for this Freeloader series release of West Memphis 3. Thank you guys, and there will be another. We'll just get to keep on trucking, man, and keep putting out episodes. So look forward to a Patreon exclusive episode dropping like right now, right around the same time this comes out. So yeah, if it's never been a better time to join Patreon, patreon.com/truecrimeguys. $2 a month gets you all kinds of content, bonus episodes. It gets you Michael's show, Higher Thoughts, where he gets on there in a higher state of mind and answers questions from listeners and just spouts off about whatever's going on in his mind. A lot of times he has his wife on or he has different guests on. I love the show. You guys should also check that out. And we do giveaways on Patreon. And yeah, there's all kinds of fun on there to be had. So yeah, $2 a month gets you to be a part of the party. So it's never too late to join. And that about does it, guys. I'm tired of rambling. I'm tired of being alone. I need Michael, my sidekick. And so I'm going to sign off. See you guys later. Keep creeping.
True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you. Sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army. We out here making murder, get murder, get murder. True crime guys, in the desert we like a mirage. It's okay if you clicked on us cause you thought we was True Crime Garage. Now we ain't mad at you. Sit down, let us talk at you. I'm talking to the creeper army. We out here making murder charming.